Chapter 1481 Leaving. Chapter 1481 Leaving. In the dark red sky, cold wind was swirling. Swoosh, swoosh. Two shadows, one in front and one behind, swept past the void. Real God Kong Ling, it is impossible for you to escape. Jian Wushuang's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He was staring at the shadow in front of him, which was escaping, and he had already used the secret skill of dragon blood. Jian Wushuang, I am not one of the Blood Emperor's men, and I have never depended on the Heartless King. Moreover, I have never had any dealings with you before. Why must you be so ruthless? Real God Kong Ling's furious voice could be heard from the front. Ruthless? Jian Wushuang laughed coldly. Everyone, including you and I, have been thrown into the Sky Sword prison involuntarily. I need to kill 10 real gods so that I can leave. As such, I'm sorry. As soon as his words left his mouth, the divine power that was already burning in a frenzy in Jian Wushuang's body intensified even further. With the second stage of the secret skill of dragon skill, Jian Wushuang's speed increased by 100-fold immediately, and he caught up with real God Kong Ling instantly. Die! Jian Wushuang did not hesitate due to pity in the slightest bit, and he attacked straight away. After some time, real God Kong Ling, who belonged to the third stage of real gods, was killed by Jian Wushuang. The 10th real god. Atop the void, Jian Wushuang looked down at real God Kong Ling's body with his eyes glowing brilliantly. From the time he had started his massacre in the Darkness Mountain up to the current moment, it had been 2 years. And finally, he had killed the 10th real god. Initially, Jian Wushuang had planned to release his power against the Blood Emperor and the Heartless King. Hence, the 10 real gods who had died at his hand should have been experts under the 2 kings. However, it was a pity that the experts under the command of the 2 kings were not idiots. Since it was only him executing the massacre, the experts had already left the territory of the 2 kings and found themselves a hiding place in the Sky Sword prison. As such, Jian Wushuang had no choice but to kill those real gods who had never offended him. Buzz! Buzz! In the void, a peculiar power gathered all of a sudden. They have come! Jian Wushuang's eyes were glowing with delight. At the moment that the peculiar power gathered, all the experts in each and every corner of the whole Sky Sword prison felt it. Within the purple exquisite attic, Universe God Tianfeng and Universe God Gu Tong raised their heads. This power, someone is about to leave the Sky Sword prison. If I'm not wrong, the person who is leaving is Jian Wushuang, right? Apart from him, the Sky Sword prison does not have anyone else who has fulfilled the conditions to leave. He left the Sky Sword prison after less than 5,000 years. I am envious of him. Within the Crimson Fortress in the Darkness Mountain, that little kid Jian Wushuang has finally left. The Blood Emperor clenched both his fists. However, his eyes were filled with mixed feelings. Initially, he had planned to kill Jian Wushuang and acquire the blood-killing plate armor. With this, he would have a chance to leave the Sky Sword prison. However, in the end, Jian Wushuang's speed of growth had completely stunned him. Hence, he had given up hope of acquiring the blood-killing plate armor a long time ago. When he saw Jian Wushuang leaving at that moment, he heaved a sigh of relief. The Fiery King sat within a sea of fire, at the bottom of a lofty volcano in the fiery prison. At that moment, he could not help but raise his head. This little kid has met the conditions. The Fiery King murmured and his face wore a smile. Fiery King, a message was delivered. Jian Wushuang, you're about to leave? The Fiery King questioned. Yes, Jian Wushuang chuckled. I am bidding my farewell to you before I leave. Thank you for taking care of me for the past few years. After I get out, I will definitely find a way to get you out. Haha, don't think of trying to get me out. The chances are slim. You should continue training outside. For my lineage of Scarlet to have a junior like you, I can die without any regrets. The Fiery King laughed heartily. No matter what, I will do my best. After Jian Wushuang repeated himself, the peculiar power in front of him took the form of a giant hand and grabbed Jian Wushuang with lightning speed. Jian Wushuang had no way of defending himself against it, and had also never even thought of defending himself against it. He was caught by the giant hand and sent into a wormhole that had opened temporarily. As the wormhole disappeared, the Sky Sword prison settled down quickly. Within a dim cave, the space opened up, and with a glowing light, Jian Wushuang's body appeared in the cave. This place is. As soon as he appeared, Jian Wushuang's eyes surveyed the area. In no time, his attention was focused on a shadow sitting with its legs crossed in the area in front of him. He was a middle-aged man who carried 3 long swords, and he looked like a unique fierce sword. This middle-aged man caught Jian Wushuang's attention due to the cruel sword essence that he was releasing. This sword essence had caused even Jian Wushuang to be terrified. Suddenly, the middle-aged man opened his eyes. In a split second, a vast amount of sword essence burst forth, and his cold eyes locked on to Jian Wushuang immediately. At that moment, Jian Wushuang only felt as if his neck had been strangled with great force by someone. He could neither speak nor breathe. This caused him to experience fear that he had never experienced before. The good thing was that this condition only lasted for a moment before it was undone. Jian Wushuang heaved a sigh of relief, and he greeted the middle-aged man respectfully at once. "I am Jian Wushuang. Greetings to the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain." What a frightening sword essence! Just a simple gaze was enough to deter Jian Wushuang from having any ideas of resisting him. This middle-aged man must be an almighty. This caused the identity of the middle-aged man in front of him to surface immediately. "Little kid, how was your experience in the Sky Sword prison?" the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain asked casually. "Not bad," Jian Wushuang replied indifferently. "Oh." The owner of the Sky Sword Mountain shot a glance at Jian Wushuang. "That's right. You have been in the Sky Sword prison for more than 4,000 years. Moreover, you have also continued to improve yourself during the 4,000 years. Hence, you will not find it uninteresting. To you, this prison has become a good training place." After hearing what was said, Jian Wushuang laughed within himself. Most of the cultivators in the Sky Sword prison had been imprisoned for many years. During these years, their abilities had risen to their maximum a long time ago. Hence, there was not much hope for them to raise their abilities any further even if they wanted to. Moreover, they were unable to leave the prison. Naturally, this was a form of suffering to them. However, Jian Wushuang was completely different. "In the past, you killed one of the white deacons in my Sky Sword Mountain. Moreover, you killed him within the Sky Sword Mountain, ignoring the rules of my Sky Sword Mountain." The voice of the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain turned cold. Jian Wushuang became stupefied. "However, I have already imprisoned you in the Sky Sword prison, as it is a rule of the Sky Sword Mountain. Since you were able to leave the Sky Sword prison by yourself, no matter what feuds you had with my Sky Sword Mountain in the past, all of them are written off. You can leave." Chapter 1482, Jian Wushuang's Request. Chapter 1482, Jian Wushuang's Request. When Jian Wushuang saw that the owner of Sky Sword Mountain had allowed himself to leave, he was delighted, but he didn't move at all. "Why, what's up?" The owner of Sky Sword Mountain sounded cold. Jian Wushuang thought for a while and said politely, "Senior, to be frank with you, I have 2 requests. I hope that Senior will agree." "Haha." The owner of Sky Sword Mountain suddenly laughed. The laughter sounded casual, but as it reverberated, the entire cave dwelling shook vigorously. Jian Wushuang was standing in the middle of the cave dwelling, and his face went pale immediately. Luckily, he had already reached the first level of state of mind. Hence, he could continue to stand on his feet in the laughter. If it were to be any ordinary person, even a real god, as long as they wasn't on the first level of state of mind, they might have knelt on the ground. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain stopped laughing, and his face grew cold. "Such a joke. I am willing to let you go, and I'm nice enough to do so. You have the guts to request something from me?" Jian Wushuang's face grew grave. His mind and soul were quivering madly under the huge pressure that the owner of Sky Sword Mountain imposed. However, he clenched his teeth and persisted. "Humph, as you're a disciple of Star Palace, tell me about it." The owner of Sky Sword Mountain glanced at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was delighted. He took a deep breath and started saying, "The first thing is that I have an enemy over the years that I've spent in Sky Sword Prison. His name is Blood Emperor. Blood Emperor is one of the 4 kings in Sky Sword Prison. I've come across him twice, and I'm definite that he's from Holocaust sect. Hence, I'd like to request that you, Senior, eliminate him." Holocaust sect? The owner of Sky Sword Mountain looked at Jian Wushuang, and he looked shocked. He previously thought Jian Wushuang was stupid to ask for something at a crucial moment. But from how things were looking, Holocaust sect is the public enemy of countless cultivators in eternal chaotic world. Regardless of when, as soon as an expert of Holocaust sect is found, he must be exterminated immediately. However, are you sure that Blood Emperor is from Holocaust sect? The owner of Sky Sword Mountain stared at Jian Wushuang. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded heavily. All right then, wait for a bit, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain said, and then he closed his eyes. Sky Sword Prison, Darkness Mountain, in the Crimson Castle. Blood Emperor was lying leisurely on a crimson bed. Now Jian Wushuang has left, my Darkness Mountain has finally resumed its tranquility, Blood Emperor muttered to himself. He had already sent a command to all the experts, who had left Darkness Mountain to avoid Jian Wushuang previously, to return. After all, he was one of the overlords in Sky Sword Prison. If those experts who were an appendage to him weren't around, he wouldn't feel like an overlord at all. In Sky Sword Prison, in such a dull and fearless environment, his only happiness was derived from his feeling as an overlord. Suddenly, vroom vroom, a strange force condensed in the void above Crimson Castle. This force, what's going on? Could it be that someone is leaving Sky Sword Prison again? Blood Emperor was still in astonishment, but the void above substantiated into a towering hand and grabbed him at lightning speed. Blood Emperor had no strength to resist, but was caught by the huge hand. At the same time, there was a terrifying, forceful strength that flushed into Blood Emperor's body and marched unhindered in his body. It's the owner of Sky Sword Mountain. Blood Emperor had fear spread across his face. Humph! It seems like what Jian Wushuang said was right. You're really from Holocaust sect. A cold voice traveled across the universe. At the same time, it rang in Blood Emperor's head. Blood Emperor stiffened in an instant. Jian Wushuang, it's Jian Wushuang. He met the owner of Sky Sword Mountain and told him about my identity. No. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain, please let me off. Please show mercy. Blood Emperor immediately roared and pleaded. You're a lackey from Holocaust sect, and you want me to show mercy? Die! Then the huge hand exerted strength, and it was like pinching an ant to death. The hand crushed Blood Emperor's body into pieces. Blood Emperor's aura immediately dispersed too. After that, the huge hand gradually vanished into thin air too. The universe resumed its original state. However, in the shattered ruins of Crimson Castle, the lady in green, who was appendage to Blood Emperor, felt an overwhelming billow in her heart. Blood Emperor is from Holocaust sect. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain found out about his identity and killed him? Jian Wushuang. Is it because of Jian Wushuang? In the dim cave dwelling, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain opened his eyes again. Jian Wushuang, you're right. Blood Emperor was really from Holocaust sect, and I've exterminated him. As the owner of Sky Sword Mountain spoke, there was rage in his eyes. These people from Holocaust sect, they deserve to die. They lurk among various cultivators in eternal chaotic world. If they do not reveal some tricks from Holocaust sect, no one would be able to tell their identity. Even if it was me, you helped me this time. Otherwise, I wouldn't know that I had imprisoned an expert from Holocaust sect in Sky Sword Prison. Tell me, what's your second request? Jian Wushuang felt touched. He could clearly feel that the owner of Sky Sword Mountain was treating him slightly better than earlier. Maybe it was because he took a huge risk to request Blood Emperor's death. From the owner of Sky Sword Mountain's point of view, it wasn't a request but a helping hand from Jian Wushuang. Hence, he had a better feeling about Jian Wushuang. Another request is that I hope Senior can release one of the 4 kings, Fiery King, from Sky Sword Prison. Jian Wushuang said with extreme care. Fiery King? The owner of Sky Sword Mountain stole a glance at Jian Wushuang and smiled faintly. You and Fiery King are related? Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded. He took good care of me when I was in Sky Sword Prison. Plus, he and I are from the same lineage originally. He could be considered as one of my seniors. I naturally want him to be released. Of course, if Senior were to have any request in return, I would try my best to fulfill it. Oh. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain immediately waved his hand. If it was an ordinary real god or universe god, I would allow it because you helped me unearth an expert from Holocaust sect earlier. However, Fiery King is one of the kings in Sky Sword Prison. He is quite useful to me, so please return. Senior, Jian Wushuang panicked. Return first. In the future, if my Sky Sword Mountain needs assistance from Lineage of Star, we can discuss it then, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain said, and then closed his eyes. Hearing that, Jian Wushuang was convinced. He didn't bother the owner of Sky Sword Mountain further, but bowed politely to him before he turned to leave. Chapter 1483, Receiving His Awards. Chapter 1483, Receiving His Awards. After the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain had left the cave, Jian Wushuang did not stay on, and he left the Sky Sword Mountain straight away. I have finally left the Sky Sword Mountain. Jian Wushuang looked at the giant Sky Sword Mountain behind him, and he felt reluctant. It should be known that he had been imprisoned in the Sky Sword Prison for 4,400 years. During Jian Wushuang's training to date, this was the place that he had stayed for the longest period of time. I should send a message to Hall Master Yuan first. Jian Wushuang took out Hall Master Yuan's transmitting token. However, when he looked at the token, Jian Wushuang's expression turned strange. From his point of view, he was a disciple of the Star Palace. In order to fulfill the ultimate disciple task, he killed someone in the Sky Sword Mountain. Hence, he had broken the rules of the Sky Sword Mountain and was imprisoned in the Sky Sword Prison by the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain himself. Such a matter must have reached the ears of the Lineage of Star by now. Under normal circumstances, Hall Master Yuan would have shown himself and thought of ways to get Jian Wushuang out. However, even though a total of 4,000 years had passed, Jian Wushuang continued to remain in the Sky Sword Prison, and in the end, he had depended on his own abilities to get out. Moreover, when he met the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain previously, he did not mention anything about it. Hall Master Yuan. Jian Wushuang sent a message and he got a reply promptly. Jian Wushuang, you got out of the Sky Sword Prison so quickly? Hall Master Yuan's voice was filled with a bit of surprise. Previously, I had thought that you would be able to get out within 50,000 years. Looking at it now, I was too conservative. In less than 5,000 years, you left the Sky Sword Prison with your own hard work. The Sky Sword Prison is extremely dangerous. My luck must have been good as well. Otherwise, I might not have a chance to send a message to you again, Hall Master Yuan. Jian Wushuang said. Haha, it is obvious that you are trying to blame it on me. However, you must understand that the Sky Sword Mountain is not a small force. Moreover, you were imprisoned by the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain himself. In my Lineage of Star, the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain might only be willing to give some face if the Palace Master showed himself. However, the Palace Master is always meditating in seclusion throughout the year. You know this, Hall Master Yuan said. Understood. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. All right, since you have come out, return back here and meet me so that you can receive the additional rewards for completing the ultimate disciple task. After finishing speaking, Hall Master Yuan cut off the transmission. Jian Wushuang kept his token. However, his gaze was abnormal. Jian Wushuang, if my guess is not wrong, when Hall Master Yuan arranged the third part of your task, he had already guessed that you would be imprisoned in the Sky Sword Prison. In other words, you could also say that he arranged for you to be imprisoned in the Sky Sword Prison. The King of Venomous Worms' voice echoed in Jian Wushuang's head. I have also thought of this point. Jian Wushuang smiled indifferently. In actual fact, when he was just imprisoned in the Sky Sword Prison, he had already had suspicions. After all, Back then when he was about to face Universe God Mo Yen, he had made ample preparations, and the process had been executed perfectly. Although those real gods near Universe God Mo Yen did not realize it, the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain, who was in a distant cave, had actually realized it and took action personally. For this to happen, the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain must really possess remarkable powers. Even though he was meditating in seclusion, he still had everything that was going on in the Sky Sword Mountain in his eyes. However, there was another possibility, and that was that the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain had had his eyes on the Sky Sword Mountain for that period of time. More accurately, he had his eyes on Jian Wushuang. As long as I make a move, the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain will show up immediately and imprison me in the Sky Sword Prison. Jian Wushuang shook his head and giggled. Of course, he knew that Hall Master Yuan had done this to train him, and it was out of goodwill. Moreover, although he was imprisoned for over 4,000 years in the Sky Sword Prison, in terms of abilities, he had improved greatly. Let's return to the lineage of Star. Jian Wushuang headed for the Purple Moon Sanctuary immediately. Within the dazzling galaxy of the Star Land in the Purple Moon Sanctuary. I have returned. Jian Wushuang appeared in the vast galaxy. As he looked at the neighboring galaxies, he could also faintly see a meta beast playing in the galaxy from the corners of his eyes. Hence, he could not help but wear a smile. In no time, Jian Wushuang returned to within the lineage of Star. As soon as he had returned, he went to see Hall Master Yuan. Jian Wushuang, after not seeing you for over 4,000 years, your abilities must have risen considerably, right? Hall Master Yuan looked at Jian Wushuang with a smile. About there, Jian Wushuang said. I also know a bit about the rules of the Sky Sword Prison. Since you left the Sky Sword Prison with your own abilities, you must have killed a sufficient number of experts. Tell me, how many experts have you killed? Are they universe gods or real gods? Hall Master Yuan questioned. I killed 10 real gods. Jian Wushuang did not hide the truth. Real gods? Hall Master Yuan's eyes brightened. Although the real gods in the Sky Sword Prison have their divine power, restricted to some extent, their bodies and unique skills did not weaken. For you to be able to kill 10 such real gods, haha, seems like you must possess the power to rank in the top 30 of the universe god ranking list. Should be. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. In actual fact, Hall Master Yuan only knew that he had killed 10 real gods. However, he did not know that it was done in a very short period of time. Moreover, among the 10 real gods, some of them had already comprehended a small portion of the power of Heaven Wei, and belonged to the second stage of real gods. In addition, Jian Wushuang's power might even be able to rival that of the 4 kings in the Sky Sword Prison. For him to be able to do this much, Jian Wushuang's abilities could totally earn him a place in the top 20, or even higher, on the Universe God ranking list. Alright, there is no need for unnecessary words. Now, I shall give you the additional rewards for completing the ultimate disciple task. Hall Master Yuan became stern. Firstly, the additional reward for the first part of the task, 100 million Chaos Gems. For these 100 million Chaos Gems, due to the fact that you owe the Star Pavilion 47 million Chaos Gems, you will only receive 53 million Chaos Gems. Hall Master Yuan took out a Qianquan ring and handed it to Jian Wushuang. After Jian Wushuang received the ring, he swept his eyes past it normally and kept it after that. Although 53 million Chaos Gems was not a small sum, to Jian Wushuang just then, it was not a lot. It should be known that within the Sky Sword Prison, he had killed 10 real gods. Among the 10 real gods, there were weak ones as well as strong ones. By killing the real gods, all their valuables and family keepsakes had fallen into his hands. By adding all of them up, the Chaos Gems that he possessed had already exceeded 1,000 million. For the second and third parts of the task, you have acquired the opportunity to enter the Real God Hall. For the second part of the task, you are allowed to enter for a month. For the third part of the task, you are allowed to enter for 2 months. By adding them up, you are allowed to enter for a total of 3 months. I have already sent a message to inform the deacon, who is in charge of guarding the real God Hall. You can go there directly, Hall Master Yuan said. Understood. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. Lastly, there is another additional reward. Real God-level Chaos Unique Treasure. Chapter 1484. Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor. Chapter 1484. Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor. Jian Wushuang beamed with joy. Real God-level Chaos Unique Treasure was extremely hard to come across, and it was an extremely valuable treasure. Even among real gods in eternal chaotic world, there was hardly any who owned real God-level Chaos Unique Treasure. For instance, when Jian Wushuang killed 10 real gods in Sky Sword Prison and retrieved their Qianquan rings, there was only one real god who owned a real God-level Chaos Unique Treasure, and the real God-level Chaos Unique Treasure that the real god owned was a long spear. The long spear was a divine attack weapon. Jian Wushuang used a sword. Even if he received a real God-level Chaos Unique Treasure which was a spear, he could only look at it. But then, he received a bonus reward from completing the ultimate disciple task in Lineage of Star. The bonus reward was aimed for him. The real God-level Chaos Unique Treasure was definitely something he could use. Jian Wushuang, first tell me which segment of real God-level Chaos Unique Treasure you'd like. Hall Master Yuan looked at Jian Wushuang. This. Jian Wushuang thought for a while, then he lifted his head and answered. To me, the most useful thing will be a real God-level Chaos Unique Treasure in Forming Realm. Forming Realm? Hall Master Yuan stunned. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded. He knew clearly how useful a realm treasure would be. In an evenly matched situation, a person with a realm treasure would definitely be at an advantage. Plus, even if one were in danger, he could use a realm treasure to suppress his enemy and make an escape easily. Hitting when one pleased and leaving when one wished. That was the biggest advantage of realm treasure. Jian Wushuang had always possessed a realm treasure, Blazing Quicksand Gourd. It was a pity that the stronger his power grew, the less useful the Blazing Quicksand realm would be to him. For instance, when he was in Sky Sword Prison, he gave his all to performing Blazing Quicksand realm. But it only had suppressing power to Universe God in the 3rd and 4th level to a certain extent. To Universe Gods who were stronger, the effect was rather unnoticeable. Hence, he naturally wanted to get another stronger realm treasure. However, after hearing Jian Wushuang's reply, Hall Master Yuan's expression grew strange. He said, Jian Wushuang, how dare you? Out of various kinds of treasure, realm treasure is no doubt the rarest and hardest treasure to come by. Comparing the real God-level Chaos Unique Treasures, a realm Chaos Unique Treasure could equal a few divine attack weapons. Jian Wushuang was speechless. Hall Master Yuan shook his head and continued. Forget about real God-level realm Chaos Unique Treasure for now. I shall prepare 2 treasures, and you can choose from them carefully. Then Hall Master Yuan waved. A green sword and crimson armor that gave out a strange aura appeared in the void before him. Jian Wushuang immediately looked at the 2 treasures. You should be able to see for yourself. The green sword is a divine attack weapon, while the crimson armor is a defense treasure. Look. Hall Master Yuan looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, pick the crimson armor. King of Venomous Worms' voice rang in Jian Wushuang's head. Of course. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Hall Master Yuan, I picked the armor. You're quite smart. Hall Master Yuan smiled too. Among treasures of the same kind, although armor couldn't be compared to realm treasure, it is more valuable than a divine attack weapon. The crimson armor is named Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor, and I specially picked it for you. Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor? Jian Wushuang beamed with joy. The armor's name included the word reincarnation. Jian Wushuang, you should have comprehended reincarnation doctrine from the 4 supreme doctrines, right? Hall Master Yuan looked at Jian Wushuang with interest. Yes. Jian Wushuang nodded and admitted it straight away. That's it then. Not only is Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor great in defense power, it contains a secret skill that can enhance one's power. The secret skill requires the power of reincarnation to trigger it. The higher one's comprehension towards reincarnation doctrine is, the stronger the power triggered from the secret skill. However, relying on your current comprehension level, it should still be rather difficult to trigger the secret skill, Hall Master Yuan said. Jian Wushuang grabbed the blood feather reincarnation armor straight away. He touched the armor gently with his palm. Jian Wushuang could even faintly resonate with the armor. Then Jian Wushuang's smile grew even wider. Oh yeah, as you already have blood feather reincarnation armor, please pass me the blood-killing plate armor. Hall Master Yuan looked over. Blood-killing plate armor? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. Blood-killing plate armor is Holocaust sex treasure after all. Previously, you were weaker in power, and there was no better treasure. You had no choice but to use blood-killing plate armor, but now, your power had increased tremendously, and you have got yourself a stronger blood feather reincarnation armor. It's best to not keep blood-killing plate armor with you. The experts from Holocaust sect possess a certain sensory power to blood-killing plate armor after all. If you were to wander an eternal chaotic world with blood-killing plate armor with you, you might catch the attention of the people from Holocaust sect, Hall Master Yuan explained. Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. In Sky Sword Prison, he had been under Blood Emperor's watch because of blood-killing plate armor. In Eternal Chaotic World, there were definitely more hidden Holocaust sect experts. There definitely were experts stronger than Blood Emperor, but he had never come across one before. It was naturally best to pass blood-killing plate armor to Hall Master Yuan. Jian Wushuang removed the owner recognition on blood-killing plate armor, then passed it to Hall Master Yuan. This blood-killing plate armor saved my life countless times. Jian Wushuang sighed. Although he loathed to hand it over, he had no choice. Blood-killing plate armor was Holocaust sex treasure after all. Very soon, Jian Wushuang left Hall Master Yuan's and returned to Sword Star where he resided. He saw Qiu Yuan Sword Star, and briefly asked about how the internal affairs and lineage of Star had been over the past 4,000 years. Then Jian Wushuang opted to cultivate in seclusion. In the secret room, Jian Wushuang sat down while the crimson blood feather reincarnation armor floated before him. Start owner recognition. There was a glimpse of light shimmering in Jian Wushuang's eyes, and he started the owner recognition process. Blood feather reincarnation armor was a real god-level chaos unique treasure after all. It wasn't easy for it to recognize a new owner, but fortunately, Jian Wushuang comprehended reincarnation doctrine, and he was a person of quick comprehension. There wasn't any accident in the process of owner recognition. A month later, blood feather reincarnation armor turned into a crimson robe and was put on by Jian Wushuang. After owner recognition, Jian Wushuang started studying the secret skill in blood feather reincarnation armor. Jian Wushuang was surprised when he started to study it. Haha, Hall Master Yuan only knew I comprehended reincarnation doctrine, but he didn't know how much I comprehended reincarnation doctrine. Its beginner level requires one to possess comprehension level towards reincarnation doctrine that could pass through the first level of Doctrine Palace. And I happened to reach the prerequisites. Chapter 1485, Challenging the Star Tower Again. Chapter 1485, Challenging the Star Tower Again. The secret skill of the blood feather reincarnation armor, indeed, required a very high level of the reincarnation doctrine. Just the beginner level alone would require the power to clear the first level of the Doctrine Palace. However, Jian Wushuang had an extremely high level of comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine. During the 4,000 years in the Sky Sword Prison, he had been studying the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation intensively. As a result, he had completely understood the first 3 paintings of the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation. Hence, he possessed the power to clear the first level of the Doctrine Palace. In just a short while, Jian Wushuang managed to get the hang of the secret skill. Within the secret room, Jian Wushuang continued to sit with his legs crossed. However, he had already fully activated the secret skill of the blood feather reincarnation armor. Gosh, this power! Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly and felt the enormous amount of power in his hands. It was the full release of his divine power. However, After he had activated his blood and the secret skill of the reincarnation armor, his divine power increased greatly compared to the past. As of now, my divine power is unable to rival that of a real god. However, the distance between us is no longer as huge as before, Jian Wushuang sighed. The difference in divine power between a real god and universe god was extremely great. Previously in the Sky Prison Tower, it was because of the fact that the real god's divine power was restricted that Jian Wushuang could kill them. If not for the restriction, he could only fight with the weakest of the real gods. However, at that very moment, with the secret skill of the blood feather reincarnation armor, the difference in divine power between him and the real gods had been reduced greatly. Not only does this blood feather reincarnation armor increase my defense greatly, it has also caused my abilities as a whole to skyrocket. Jian Wushuang chuckled, and he was elated. After getting the hang of the secret skill, Jian Wushuang walked out of the secret room. Next, he walked toward the Star Tower. The Star Tower was one of the 3 training grounds of the lineage of Star, and Jian Wushuang had only cleared its first level. Within the second level of the Star Tower, swoosh, Jian Wushuang summoned 9 shadows and unleashed his sword principles. He was extremely swift and fierce. The long-bearded, strict middle-aged man who fought with him also swung his long sword and clashed with Jian Wushuang's attacks continuously. However, it was obvious that Jian Wushuang's sword principles were faster and fiercer. Their power was also a lot greater. Go down! Jian Wushuang gave a shout, and a sword light struck the body of the strict middle-aged man like lightning and caused him to retreat. The second level was cleared. As for the third level was a lot more difficult than the second level. By relying on his own sword principles and his close combat abilities, he was not the stern middle-aged man's opponent. In the end, Jian Wushuang had no choice but to use the reincarnation doctrine that he had learnt. By adding reincarnation power to the sword principles, their power rose sharply, and he cleared the third level straight away. After clearing the third level, Jian Wushuang did not continue. Instead, he left. I have already learnt 3 of the 4 secret skills of the lineage of Star. For these 3 secret skills, the secret skills of Star Palace could be learnt when one becomes a disciple of the Star Palace. As for Xianmia Golden Body, I only managed to learn it after I cleared the 19th level of the Illusionary Mind Sea. However, I am still unable to explain the origin of the secret skill of Dragon Blood. But now, I have cleared the 3rd level of the Star Tower. Hence, I am able to learn another secret skill. Thus, it is logical that I am able to learn the secret skill of Dragon Blood. As Jian Wushuang walked across the tall buildings alone, he wore an indifferent smile. Senior Wushuang. Greetings, Senior. During his walk, the disciples of the lineage of Star, who Jian Wushuang had met, all greeted him modestly. As for some of the disciples, they were talking in whispers. Senior Wushuang demonstrated his extraordinary skills in the previous battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace, and he is almost on par with Ling Fei Bai. Later on, he went out to the outside world alone for training, and this journey alone was for over 4,000 years. It is only until when the next battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace is about to reopen again that he finally returned. Say, do you think Senior Wushuang will be able to retain his position as a disciple of the Star Palace in the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace this time round? No idea. This is hard to say. If Senior Wushuang remains a universe god of the second heaven, then there will be no problem. However, at that moment, he and the equally famous Ling Fei Bai back, then will have both become universe gods of the third heaven. The battle between the Star Palace disciples, who were universe gods of the third heaven, will be more intense. However, Senior Wushuang is extremely talented. Even if he were to be reduced to a normal disciple in the battle this time round, by waiting for another 5,000 years for the next battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace, he would definitely be able to climb up the ranks. That is true. Jian Wushuang. A voice could be heard. Jian Wushuang stopped walking and turned his head. When he saw the person walking over, he wore a smile. Long time no see, Ling Feibai. Jian Wushuang laughed happily. It is because of the fact that you keep on immersing yourself in training in the outside world. The elegant and smart youth Ling Feibai came to the front of Jian Wushuang. Ling Feibai was one of the top geniuses of the lineage of Star. During the previous battle between the geniuses of the Star Palace disciples, at the universe god of the second heavens level, Ling Feibai could be said to be unrivaled. Even Jian Wushuang had lost to Ling Feibai in that battle. After over 4,000 years, Ling Feibai had already passed the god's test for the third heaven, and become a universe god of the third heaven. Just a while more, and the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace, that occurs once every 5,000 years, will begin again. Do you have confidence this time round? Ling Feibai looked toward Jian Wushuang. The battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace? Jian Wushuang was stunned. Back then, when he had first come to the Star Palace, he had paid close attention to the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace. After all, if he were unable to keep himself within the top 5, he would be reduced to a normal disciple. In the lineage of Star, the difference in treatment between a normal disciple and a Star Palace disciple was extremely huge. However, at that moment, Jian Wushuang was no longer that interested in the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace. Looking at the time, the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace is indeed about to begin soon. Jian Wushuang chuckled and spoke again immediately. I am quite confident. How about you? I have no confidence at all. Ling Feibai shook his head and forced a smile. Jian Wushuang, ever since you made a breakthrough to the universe god of the third heaven, you have been living in the outside world. Hence, you have never fought with the disciples who are universe gods of the third heaven before. As such, there are some things that you do not know. Give me an example. Jian Wushuang spoke with interest. Then I shall tell you. Within the universe god disciples of the 3 levels of the lineage of Star, the number of disciples who are universe gods of the third heaven is the greatest, Ling Feibai said. Oh. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows, and he understood quickly. All the disciples in the lineage of Star were real geniuses, and a normal god's tests were unable to stop them. Hence, those disciples would usually not stay at the same level for long, as they would be able to make a breakthrough. They would make a breakthrough from universe god of the first heaven to the second heaven, and then, from the second heaven to the third heaven. However, after reaching universe god of the third heaven. Chapter 1486, Look for Someone. Chapter 1486, Look for Someone. There was a huge threshold between universe god in the third heaven and real god. Unlike leveling up to universe god in the second heaven from the first heaven, when the time came, it had happened when one passed the god's test. There were many universe gods in the third heaven in eternal chaotic world. Even in a smaller world, they could give birth to universe god in third heaven, and more than one of them. However, real gods, compared to universe gods, there were much lesser real gods. Countless universe gods would stop at the level of universe gods in the third heaven for their entire life. Under such conditions, it was normal that the number of disciples of lineage of Star, who were universe gods in the third heaven, would be more than universe gods in the first and second heaven. Because there are too many disciples who are universe gods in the third heaven, the fight is the most vigorous, especially to fight for the quota as disciples of Star Palace. Ling Feibai explained. Then, among the disciples of lineage of Star, who are universe gods in the third heaven, the top 2 are listed in universe god ranking list. Besides the 2 of them, the others who are close to having fighting power, like one on the universe god ranking list, and even those who have fighting power, like one on the universe god ranking list, are almost a dozen of them. The duration that I've been a universe god in the third heaven is too short. In terms of power, I might not be in the top 20 among the disciples. You mean, when the fight for the quota as disciple of Star Palace starts, I might not be able to retain my position as a disciple of Star Palace. Jian Wushuang was quiet. Ling Feibai was a genius through and through. However, it was a short time since he had broken through and become a universe god in the third heaven. His power had yet to increase to its extreme limit. He still couldn't fight against the genius disciples, who had been trapped at the level of universe God in the third heaven for many years. With your gifted talent, even if you became an ordinary disciple, when the next fight comes, you can easily take it back, no? Jian Wushuang smiled. That's true, Ling Feibai nodded with confidence. All right, I shall leave first. I have business to attend to. Ling Feibai left very quickly. Jian Wushuang continued to walk forward, but his facial expression grew strange. Battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace. If Ling Feibai didn't remind me, I would have forgotten about it. However, with my current power, I might play the bully if I were to participate the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace. Jian Wushuang laughed from the bottom of his heart. 4,000 years ago, when he had first passed his inverse cultivation test in the second heaven, and comprehended a slight bit of power of reincarnation, he had fought against an expert on Universe God ranking list, Zhao Han. Back then his fighting power wasn't much weaker than Zhao Han's. Then, after he went through 4,000 years of training in Sky Sword Prison, his power had increased tremendously. Previously, Hall Master Yuan never once see him when he launched his full power. He merely heard about him killing 10 real gods in Sky Sword Prison, and determined that he possessed the fighting power of the top 30 on Universe God ranking list. One should know that the two most outstanding people from the disciples, who were Universe Gods in the third heaven, their ranking on Universe God ranking list was not in the top 40s. Hence, neither were Jian Wushuang's match. Hence, Jian Wushuang felt like a bully to participate the battle, to become a disciple of the Star Palace, with the other Universe Gods in the third heaven. The current me in lineage of Star, or even 10 cultivation sanctuaries, already stands steadily on my feet. Plus, I have many resources to hand, I can go and do that now. Jian Wushuang's eyes gave out a gleam. Vientiane Tower, also known for covering all manifestations of the universe. Its force covered every single corner of 10 cultivation sanctuaries. In the secret room of Vientiane Tower on Star Land, Jian Wushuang sat in his crimson robe with a sword on his back. There was tea served before him too. I wonder what Vientiane Tower can do for you. A purple-haired elderly stood before Jian Wushuang with a smile. I want you, Vientiane Tower, to look for someone for me, Jian Wushuang said. Look for someone? The purple-haired elderly was surprised. I know Vientiane Tower does all kinds of deals. Looking for someone should be one of the deals, right? Jian Wushuang lifted his head to look at the purple-haired elderly. Of course. In Vientiane Tower, as long you can afford to pay, there's nothing Vientiane Tower cannot do for you. The purple-haired elderly smiled faintly, and then asked, I wonder what's the name of the person you're looking for, and where is he from? Her name is Lung Ruxia, or maybe Lung Rushuang. She's a lady from Snow Kingdom, an ordinary eternal world. She only arrived in eternal chaotic world in the past recent 10,000 years, Jian Wushuang said. The level of her power? The purple-haired elderly asked. I don't know. Jian Wushuang shook his head. Maybe a universe god. Also she may have broken through and became real god. You don't know the level of her power? The purple-haired elderly thought and continued to ask. Do you know the person's other characteristics? And, she's an inborn sinner. Jian Wushuang said in a low voice. What? The purple-haired man's face changed, and immediately creased his eyebrows. Why, is there a problem? Jian Wushuang asked. Yes, a little. The purple-haired elderly nodded. You should know that inborn sinners represent calamity. The experts in eternal chaotic world deep-seated hatred against inborn sinners. Not much better than Holocaust sect. Hence, as long as the inborn sinners aren't stupid, they will intentionally hide their identity, and they will keep a low profile. They won't even use their name. Hence, it'll be rather difficult for us to look for them. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes slightly. He knew what the purple-haired elderly said was true. After Lung Ruxia left Green Fire World, theoretically, she should first depart to Deyu World. However, when Jian Wushuang was wandering in Deyu World, he once requested for the overlord of Deyu World, Deyu Palace and Scarlet Island to search for Lung Ruxia's carefully. However, after the search, there found no trace. Over the years, he had been looking for ways to find Lung Rushua's whereabouts, but he had achieved nothing. He knew that it wasn't easy to look for Lung Rushua. Hence, he had came to Vientiane Tower. In the entire eternal chaotic world, he reckoned that only Vientiane Tower had the ability to look for Lung Rushua for him. Vientiane Tower is also known to be formidable. No matter how well she has hidden, you should be able to find her. Jian Wushuang stared at the purple-haired elderly as he spoke. That's true, the purple-haired elderly smiled. However, to find a person who has tried all ways to hide her identity in the boundless eternal chaotic world, and without the knowledge of the inborn sinner's power level, it is really not easy. Hence, the payment required is extremely expensive. How much? Jian Wushuang asked coldly. 1 billion chaos gems. Vientiane Tower can guarantee that we will find Lung Rushua's whereabouts in 10,000 years' time. The purple-haired elderly said with full confidence. 10,000 years? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. 10,000 years is a little too long. Chapter 1487, The Fight for Prestige. Chapter 1487, The Fight for Prestige. Jian Wushuang was not too concerned with 1,000 million chaos gems. What he was concerned about was time. After all, his wife had been completely suppressed by Lung Rushua. Moreover, it had been a very long time since Lung Rushua left the Green Fire world. In that period of time, he had absolutely no idea how Lung Rushuang was doing. Did her circumstances become worse? Jian Wushuang was as anxious as a burning fire. Naturally, it was better for Lung Rushua to be found as early as possible. 10,000 years is already considered short, the purple-haired old man said. All of a sudden his expression changed. By the way, do you have a picture of Lung Rushua, or portrait-related items? I have her portrait. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. He would naturally have a portrait of his own wife. Even if he didn't, he could rely on his own memory and draw one on the spot. After receiving the portrait, the purple-haired old man swept his eyes past it. Afterward, he revealed a smile. What a great beauty! In the whole eternal chaotic world, there are not many people with such good looks. This makes it easier for us to find her. How about this? The cost will remain unchanged at 1,000 million chaos gems. My Vientiane Tower will do our best to give you an answer within 3,000 years. 3,000 years? Jian Wushuang's eyes squinted. No problem. This is the 300 million chaos gem deposit. When there is news, I will give you the remaining amount. All right. The purple-haired old man accepted the chaos gem heartily. Jian Wushuang left his own transmission token behind and left. Inside a pub, Jian Wushuang sat on a side desk and drank wine by himself. Schwanger, an extremely beautiful figure that could move people, appeared in Jian Wushuang's mind. 3,000 years. No matter where you are, I will definitely find you. Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly, and his eyes glowed brilliantly. Lung Rushuang was his wife, as well as the love of his life. Jian Wushuang. A message was sent over abruptly. Hall Master Yuan. Jian Wushuang replied immediately. Where are you? Are you within the lineage of Star? Hall Master Yuan questioned. Nope, but I am about to go back now, Jian Wushuang said. Don't return first. I need your help for a small matter, Hall Master Yuan said. Oh. Jian Wushuang revealed a surprised expression. This is what happened, Hall Master Yuan spoke. Within our starland, there is a weak small sect known as Green Lightning Sect. The Green Lightning Sect is under the charge of the lineage of Star. Not long ago, Green Lightning Sect and its opponent Seven Planet Sect agreed on a duel between their disciples. Naturally, this duel concerned the benefits the sects would get respectively. Hence, both sides had a tacit agreement to invite experts from the outside. Naturally, the Green Lightning Sect requested the aid of the lineage of Star at once. The lineage of Star had never declined before, and we sent a Star Palace disciple over. Initially, with a Star Palace disciple who is a universe god of the third heaven, it would be easy to help the Green Lightning Sect win the duel. However, the Green Lightning Sect lost the duel. Oh, Jian Wushuang shuddered. All of the Star Palace disciples were geniuses among geniuses. A Star Palace disciple who was a universe god of the third heaven should have fighting capabilities nearing that of the universe gods on the universe god ranking list. However, the universe god of the third heaven had actually lost to a disciple of the seven-planet sect. Could it be that the seven-planet palace invited an expert from the universe god ranking list? Jian Wushuang questioned. It would be good if the seven-planet palace invited an expert from the universe god ranking list. After all the experts in the universe god ranking list were extremely famous, and they would be recognized straight away. The lineage of Star and the Green Lightning sect would be able to take precautions. However, the main point is that the person whom the seven-planet palace invited is a universe god that has never been heard of before. His name is Ling Dan. Before this, Ling Dan did not have any reputation. However, he is extremely powerful, Hall Master Yuan said. When that duel began, one of the deacons was present. The deacon believed that although the universe god whom the seven-planet palace invited had no reputation, looking at his abilities, he could be ranked within the universe god ranking list. Moreover, he might be in the top 50, or even the top 40. Jian Wushuang became stupefied at once. Top 40 of the universe god ranking list. The two most outstanding Star Palace disciples of the lineage of Star were unable to rank in the top 40 of the universe god ranking list. The disciple of our lineage of Star was defeated in that duel. Moreover, the defeat was extremely tragic. Initially, this was nothing. However, the key point was that during the duel between Ling Dan and the disciple of the Star Palace, Ling Dan used every possible means to humiliate the disciple. Moreover, he spoke of the Star Palace and lineage of Star many times. After that duel ended, he also mentioned that he would stay within the seven-planet palace for this period of time and wait for the lineage of Star to send an even more outstanding student to fight him. Moreover, this was said in front of many cultivators. What do you think he is trying to do? Hall Master Yuan questioned. That is very simple. He wishes to use our Star Palace disciples as a stepping stone and make a name for himself in the eternal chaotic world, so that he can get into the universe god ranking list, Jian Wushuang replied. That's right, Hall Master Yuan laughed. He wishes to make a name for himself by using the Star Palace disciples as a whetstone. How can my lineage of Star allow that? If he really gets his way with it, would our lineage of Star still have face? Understood. You wish for me to go to the Green Lightning sect and defeat that Ling Dan head-on? Jian Wushuang giggled. That's right. Ling Dan's strength is very impressive. Among the Star Palace disciples, you should be the only one with the power to defeat him. Hall Master Yuan spoke. Moreover, letting you take action is not merely for the lineage of Star's face. It is also for yourself. You already have the fighting capabilities to be in the universe god ranking list. However, within the 10 cultivation sanctuaries, you remain silent and unknown. This is the opportunity for you to prove yourself. I do not wish to prove myself. Being unknown to public might not be bad, Jian Wushuang said. If you were an expert by yourself, it would be fine even if you didn't have a reputation. However, you are a disciple of the lineage of Star. Since the lineage of Star has such a splendid disciple, how can we not let the people know about it? Hall Master Yuan said. At the end of the day, isn't it for prestige? Jian Wushuang said. Since you understand, all is well. Stop with the unnecessary complaints, please go. After finished talking, Hall Master Yuan terminated the transmission. Jian Wushuang, do you feel that you have no choice? Although you are unwilling to make a reputation for yourself, the lineage of Star has forced you to do so. The King of Venomous Worm's voice, which was filled with interest, echoed in Jian Wushuang's head. Actually, this is very normal. To a sect, especially a great force like the lineage of Star, there is no longer any huge benefit to fight for. Hence, they can only fight for prestige. By having a very powerful disciple under them, it is beneficial to the lineage of Star in terms of recruiting other exceptional disciples, or in terms of other areas. I know. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. As he knew the thought process of the highest administration of the lineage of Star, such as Hall Master Yuan, he could understand. Since Hall Master Yuan has given an order personally, I shall make a trip to the Green Lightning sect. At the same time, I will fight for the lineage of Star's prestige. Jian Wushuang moved his body immediately. Chapter 1488, Jian Wushuang's Arrival. Chapter 1488, Jian Wushuang's Arrival. Green Lightning Sect in a lofty palace. There were two figures sitting together. One was an elegant man with long purple hair, while the other was an old lady in black robe. Elder Qiu, is there any update from Hall Master Yuan? The elegant man with long purple hair asked. Yes, the old lady in black robe answered. Hall Master Yuan has already arranged for his disciple to come over. Do you know who the disciple is? The elegant man with long purple hair asked. No idea. The lady in black robe shook her head. However, with Ling Dan's ability, among disciples of lineage of Star, there should only be the two strongest, Longye and Xianyi, who are qualified to fight against him. Hall Master Yuan should have sent one of the two. I hope the one who came is Senior Longye. He's number 51 on Universe God ranking list. If he were to take action personally, he could definitely defeat Ling Dan. The elegant man with long purple hair said. The old lady in a black robe creased her eyebrows slightly when she heard that. She was the deacon elderly from lineage of Star. She watched the fight between the elegant man with long purple hair and Ling Dan clearly. She was the one who had determined that Xianyi had the fighting power of one on the top 40 on Universe God ranking list. From his point of view, even if Longye were to fight Ling Dan, he would be out of the running. I wonder where did Ling Dan popped out of. I've never heard of him previously. However, he is so strong. The elegant man with long purple hair clenched his fists. He had fought with Ling Dan, but he was heavily defeated. There are countless experts in Eternal Chaotic World, and there are many geniuses that aren't famous but very strong. Ling Dan is just one of them. However, Ling Dan has the guts. How dare he use the disciple of Star Palace as his stepping stone? The old lady in a black robe had rage in her eyes. She really wanted to kill Ling Dan personally. Just you wait. When Hall Master Yuan was talking to me earlier, he sounded rather at ease. He should have a solution for this, the old lady in black robe said. In a few days' time. He's here. The old lady in a black robe and the elegant man with long purple hair, who were waiting in the palace, stood up simultaneously. They already sensed the existence of the disciple's token on the figure outside of Green Lightning sect. It is the disciple token of Disciple of Star Palace. It is definitely Senior Longye. The elegant man with long purple hair exclaimed in surprise. Let's go. Let's go and greet him. The old lady in black robe revealed a smile. The two of them immediately got up and came outside of Green Lightning sect very soon. From afar, they saw a figure in a crimson robe who stood calmly in the void. Not Senior Longye? The elegant man with long purple hair creased his eyebrows. When the two of them got closer, they finally get to see the face of the figure in a crimson robe. Jian Wushuang, the elegant man with long purple hair, couldn't help but gasp in surprise. It's him. The old lady in black robe was extremely shocked. They originally thought it would be the strongest among disciples of Star Palace, who was also the 51st on Universe God ranking list, Longye. Even if it wasn't, it should be Xianyi, who was 82nd on Universe God ranking list. But in the end, it was one who had no fame at all in 10 cultivation sanctuaries, one who was never listed on Universe God ranking list, one who had broken through and become Universe God in the third heaven. It was Jian Wushuang. Swoosh, swoosh. The old lady in a black robe and the elegant man with long purple hair appeared before Jian Wushuang. Elder Qiu Senior Hufeng, Jian Wushuang greeted them. He knew both of them. Jian Wushuang, Hall Master Yuan sent you? The old lady in a black robe, Elder Qiu asked. Yes, Jian Wushuang smiled as he nodded. Just you alone? Senior Longye or Senior Xianyi isn't here together. The elegant man with long purple hair, Hufeng, asked in a deep voice. Just me alone. Jian Wushuang was still smiling. Hall Master Yuan is joking, right? Hu Feng's face grew grave. Ling Dan is so powerful, and he could definitely be listed on Universe God ranking list. He might even be quite high up in Universe God ranking list. If I am not his match, you have no chance, Jian Wushuang. Since when did Hall Master Yuan not worry much about Lineage of Star's reputation? Senior Hu Feng. Jian Wushuang's face grew dim and unhappy. Hall Master Yuan is one of the 3 Hall Masters in Lineage of Star. How could he not bother about Lineage of Star's reputation? As he sent me, he naturally has his own intentions. What intentions? Could it be that you could really defeat Ling Dan? Forget about Ling Dan. I'm afraid you won't even stand a chance against me. Hu Feng stared at Jian Wushuang. How will you know if you don't try? Jian Wushuang stole a glance at Hu Feng. All right, Elder Qiu finally spoke. I believe in Hall Master Yuan. However, Ling Dan is really strong. From what I can see, he could be listed in the top 40 on Universe God ranking list. Jian Wushuang, are you really confident? Yeah, Jian Wushuang nodded. That's great. We'll look for Ling Dan now. How about that? Elder Qiu said. Okay, Jian Wushuang immediately agreed. Immediately, Elder Qiu brought Jian Wushuang towards where Ling Dan was. As for Hu Feng, although he didn't believe that Jian Wushuang could fight evenly with Ling Dan, he followed as well. Heavenly Fire Summit, where Green Lightning Sect fought against the Disciple of 7 Planet Palace. After Ling Dan defeated Hu Feng, he stayed back at Heavenly Fire Summit and waited for the other disciples of Lineage of Star to come forth. When Jian Wushuang came near to Heavenly Fire Summit, his soul power instantly sensed the existence of countless cultivators' aura. The number of cultivators gathered around Heavenly Fire Summit just then was definitely more than 1 million people. Why are there so many people? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. A bunch of people are here to enjoy the excitement. They came because Ling Dan intentionally spread news to attract them, Elder Qiu said. Because he attracted a large crowd, we of Lineage of Star didn't dare to flagrantly take action. Otherwise, Ling Dan would have died over and over again. However, he wouldn't be happy for too long. When this is solved, Lineage of Star will keep watch of him. We will kill him with our own hands once we get the chance to. Hearing that, Jian Wushuang complimented in silence. He could feel the murderous intentions of Elder Qiu. Merely to gain fame and be listed on Universe God ranking list, he could have challenged whichever experts on Universe God ranking list. Of all things, he decided to tease Lineage of Star and provoke us flagrantly. This Ling Dan is so irrational. Or maybe, his provocation isn't simply just to gain fame? Jian Wushuang muttered. Who knows? Elder Qiu pouted. Regardless, let's go and meet him. With a smile on his face, Jian Wushuang's figure plunged towards Heavenly Fire Summit. Ling Dan! A low bellow was heard from Jian Wushuang, and it reverberated through the universe. Chapter 1489 Ling Dan. Chapter 1489 Ling Dan. Inside a cave that had been opened temporarily in the Heavenly Fire Summit, 2 shadows sat upright in front of a long narrow table. They were chatting and drinking wine. If nothing goes wrong, the disciple that the Lineage of Star has sent should be arriving soon. A young man whose face emitted a slightly evil aura chuckled. This evil man was Ling Dan. Mr. Ling Dan, the Lineage of Star contains countless geniuses. They even have 2 experts in the Universe God ranking list. Are you sure that you can take them on? A bald-headed old man beside Ling Dan frowned. He was the master of the 7 Planet Sect. However, at that moment he felt restless. After all, Ling Dan stayed on purely because he was willing to do so, and it had nothing to do with the 7 Planet Palace. Even in that duel between the 7 Planet Palace and Green Lightning Sect previously, it was Ling Dan who had invited himself in. He said that he would fight for the 7 Planet Palace, and he would do so for no cost. At that moment, the 7 Planet Palace master felt extremely suspicious. However, when he thought about the benefits, he gave the green light. However, he had never thought that Ling Dan would actually provoke the Lineage of Star after the duel. They were in the Star Land, and the Lineage of Star was the overlord. who would be able to live a good life after offending the lineage of Star. However, things had already become as such. Even if the seven-planet palace master were to regret it, it was too late. The lineage of Star contains countless geniuses? Ling Dan laughed loudly. The lineage of Star contains many geniuses. However, in this generation, there isn't a genius who is very exceptional. Moreover, only 2 of them managed to make it into the Universe God ranking list. For the 2 of them, one of them ranked 51st on the Universe God ranking list, while the other ranked 82nd. Hence, I do not think anything of them. In other words, among the disciples of the lineage of Star of the current moment, there is no one who can fight against me. That is what you think. However, that is the lineage of Star. Mr. Ling Dan, now you actually wish to use the lineage of Star as a stepping stone to build your reputation. This would offend the lineage of Star greatly, and after that, the seven-planet palace master did not manage to finish his speech. After that, we shall talk about what happens after that another time. Ling Dan grinned. On the surface, Ling Dan looked as if he did not care. However, he knew everything clearly from the bottom of his heart. According to that great person's agreement, as long as I can make the lineage of Star lose their prestige, and use my own abilities to make it into the Universe God ranking list, he will agree to take me on as his disciple. Ling Dan's eyes were glowing brilliantly. He is an expert in the real God ranking list. Moreover, he is an extraordinary existence that is in the top 5 of the real God ranking list, and is almost able to compete with an almighty. If I could be under the supervision of such an expert, how lucky would that be? Now the opportunity is right in front of me. Even though there is some risk involved, how is it significant? The lineage of Star was one of the overloads of the Purple Moon Sanctuary. Hence, they were definitely one of the great forces in the 10 cultivation sanctuaries. However, the lineage of Star also had its own enemies. Among the enemies, one of them was a real god, who was so frightening that he could get into the top 5 of the real god ranking list. Ling Dan had seen the real god before, and even had an agreement with him. As such, he did not hesitate to spend a great amount of energy, and use the duel between the disciples of Seven Planet Palace and the Green Lightning Sect as an opportunity to provoke the lineage of Star. In other people's eyes, they thought of him as an idiot who aspired to be famous, and only wished to use the Star Palace disciples of the lineage of Star as a stepping stone. Just look on, I will definitely get myself accepted by that great person. Ling Dan clenched his fists tightly, and felt extremely eager. At that moment, Ling Dan! A shout resounded across the universe, and naturally, it also traveled to the inside of the cave. They have come! Ling Dan stood up and he wore an icy cold smile. He moved his body at once, and he appeared outside the cave. As for the seven-planet palace master, he was frowning. He then gave a sigh and followed after Ling Dan. The vast sky stood Jian Wushuang with a cold expression. At the same time, many cultivators had also appeared by the side of the Heavenly Fire Summit. The cultivators were all looking at Jian Wushuang, and talking to one another. Who is this person? I have never seen him before. Looks like he is also a disciple of the lineage of Star. The people with the rights to challenge Ling Dan should only be Longye and Xianyi, the 2 experts in the Universe God ranking list. However, this person in front of us is obviously not either of them. Amidst the talking voices, a fluttering light was shot onto the Heavenly Fire Summit. A loud, hearty laugh reverberated across the universe at the same time. Haha, they have finally come. I thought that the disciples of the lineage of Star were a bunch of cowards. It was obvious that this voice was filled with disdain. Ling Dan's body also appeared in the void, and he was standing in front of Jian Wushuang. Oh! As Ling Dan looked at Jian Wushuang, he raised his eyebrow. I have seen the portraits of Longye and Xianyi before. You are not them. Senior Longye and Xianyi are busy with their work. Hence, do you think they have the time to fight with you? Jian Wushuang chuckled. Moreover, not just any average guy can pick a fight with the both of them randomly. Oh! Ling Dan's gaze turned cold and he laughed indifferently. You have a sharp tongue. Tell me, who are you? Jian Wushuang of the Star Palace. Jian Wushuang said magnanimously. Jian Wushuang? I've never heard of this name before. Ling Dan shook his head. However, since you are a Star Palace disciple, you should be capable. Go ahead and make your move. As you wish. Jian Wushuang raised the corners of his mouth slightly. His blood mountain sword had already appeared in his hands, and remarkable sword essence rose slowly. Swish! As soon as Jian Wushuang moved his body, 9 shadows appeared at the same time. At the next moment, he had already appeared beside Ling Dan. Yes, this speed and martial art motion are both not too bad. Ling Dan chuckled, and he remained unconcerned. A large hammer could be seen appearing in his right hand, and he swung it with a swing of his hand. Although the swing looked random, it contained an extremely shocking strength. In the places that the big hammer passed through, the air rumbled. Jian Wushuang's body stretched and became a huge bow. As for the Blood Mountain sword, it became an arrow and shot forward abruptly. Clang! With a loud sound, the quake caused by the collision of great strengths caused Ling Dan's body to shake, and he could not help but retreat a step. Ling Dan raised his head with surprise. He then realized that Jian Wushuang had already turned his body around, and a bright sword light appeared with a whistle. 10,000 shadows. Swoosh! 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 Countless sword lights appeared and headed toward Ling Dan. Every sword light was extremely fast, and its power was shocking. Ling Dan's expression changed, and he immediately swung his big hammer to block crazily. This resulted in heavy collision sounds one after another. At that moment, Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed. Go down! Swish! A scarlet sword light, which looked like a crimson lightning in the sky, was unleashed. Real God's unique skill. Crimson light! The crimson lightning pierced the big hammer and struck Ling Dan's body. Puff! Ling Dan spit out a huge mouthful of blood straight away, and he retreated pathetically. Chapter 1490 Defeat. Chapter 1490 Defeat. The originally noisy voice suddenly turned deadly quiet. It was dead silent. There were more than 1 million cultivators spectating Heavenly Fire Summit. Every one of them was surprised at the sight. How could he? Hu Feng stood there with his eyes wide opened. As for Ling Dan himself, he was dumbfounded too. 3 moves. From when Jian Wushuang had started taking action until then, he had only made 3 moves. In a short time, like the blink of an eye, Ling Dan spurted blood and retreated. What did it mean? Ling Dan, you lost. Jian Wushuang held his sword with one hand as he towered in the void, and he looked at Ling Dan. Lost? What kind of joke is that? I was merely careless and you seized the opportunity. You think you're stronger than I am? That's a joke. Ling Dan's face was distorted in agony, and his gaze towards Jian Wushuang was cold. As he bellowed, there was a terrifying aura that his body gave out. Jian Wushuang die. Ling Dan's figure turned illusionary as he took action again. This time, his action brought about a terrifying murderous intention, just like a furious beast with raging anger. Jian Wushuang's face grew cold as he saw the sight. Ling Dan was already defeated, but he didn't accept failure. He wanted to fight again. Humph! A cold harumph, and Jian Wushuang took a step forward. The moment he took a step, Blood Mountain sword in his hand led an imposing sword intention and suddenly swung out. 9th Heaven stroke. Hong! A boundless sword intention soared out of 9th Heaven, and a huge, towering sword shadow suddenly appeared in the void out of nowhere. The sword shadow brought along sword intention. Just like Nemesis' sword, it struck at Ling Dan like lightning. At the same time, the secret skill from the Blood Feather reincarnation armor that Jian Wushuang was wearing was triggered, and Jian Wushuang's power was instantly pushed to a brand new, explosive level. Earlier, when Jian Wushuang had been fighting against Ling Dan, he didn't trigger the secret skill of Blood Feather reincarnation armor. But then, bang! A low thud, and in the instance, the surrounding void shattered into pieces from the force. A terrifying divine power storm swept out. From such divine power storm, a crimson figure that was covered in fresh blood suddenly plunged out. Everyone could see clearly that the explosion was from Ling Dan. Then Ling Dan's aura was extremely weak, and he was just like a dead dog when he was slammed back at Heavenly Fire Summit. Rumble. Heavenly Fire Summit was instantly pierced, while Ling Dan fell under a ruin. He didn't move an inch, and no one knew if he was dead or alive. In the middle of the battlefield, the divine power storm gradually dispersed and revealed Jian Wushuang's figure. Such an idiot! Jian Wushuang glared at the ruin where Ling Dan was as his anger soared to the air. It was deadly quiet in Heavenly Fire Summit. Dead silent. If they were to say that Jian Wushuang had severely injured Ling Dan 3 moves earlier, it might be Ling Dan who was careless. But then merely with one stroke, Ling Dan had obviously gone all out. However, with one stroke, no one knew if he was dead or alive. He was in an even more pathetic state than before. What was going on? The people on the scene were not fools. They could see clearly. One stroke and he defeated Ling Dan. This Jian Wushuang is so strong. The funniest part is that Ling Dan regarded himself as infallible. He said that he was careless, but now he has been defeated by one stroke. Too strong. This Jian Wushuang is too strong. Countless exclamation was heard in the air. The millions of cultivators surrounding Heavenly Fire Summit were in unprecedented shock. Hu Feng, who was not far behind Jian Wushuang, had his eyes wide opened. He couldn't believe the sight before him. While Elder Chiu, who was next to Hu Feng, clenched her fists tight as her eyes beamed with joy. In the universe, everyone's focus was on Jian Wushuang. Right then, Jian Wushuang's figure suddenly became illusionary. When he reappeared, he was already before 7-Planet Palace Master. 7-Planet Palace Master. A bright, loud voice was heard from Jian Wushuang, and it reverberated through the entire void. 7-Planet Palace Master is definitely involved in this. So fight. Jian Wushuang pointed at 7-Planet Palace Master with his sword. Suddenly, the entire universe was in shock. This Jian Wushuang challenged 7-Planet Palace Master after he had defeated Ling Dan. 7-Planet Palace Master. He is a true real god expert. This Jian Wushuang, he wants to challenge real god? Stunned. Everyone was stunned. 7-Planet Palace Master was stunned on the spot too. I. 7-Planet Palace Master stuttered, and he then explained. Jian Wushuang, this is a misunderstanding. Our 7-Planet Palace never once thought of provoking Lineage of Star, nor do we have the guts or capability to do so. You save your bullshit to explain yourself to the higher-ups in Lineage of Star. Now you have 2 options before you. Either you give your all and defeat me or I'll kill you and exterminate 7-Planet Palace. You can make your own decision. Jian Wushuang sounded cold. On the way there, Jian Wushuang had thought clearly. He fought to save Lineage of Star's reputation. However, Hall Master Yuan also told him to display his power. As he had already decided to display his power, he might as well make a scene. So what if he defeated Ling Dan? His goal was 7-Planet Palace Master. He wanted to challenge a real god. Hearing what Jian Wushuang had said, the 7-Planet Palace Master's face grew grave. 7-Planet Palace Master. As you're not moving, I will not be courteous. Jian Wushuang said, and his figure immediately turned illusionary. Wow! A sword shadow suddenly wreaked havoc next to 7-Planet Palace Master, and slashed towards 7-Planet Palace Master's head. 7-Planet Palace Master's face changed, and he moved backwards to dodge the sword light. Then, Jian Wushuang dashed forward and lifted the tip of Blood Mountain sword in his hand. In the void before him, there were 3 crimson snowflakes. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 3 sword lights aimed in between 7-Planet Palace Master's eyebrows, throat and his heart at the same time. Every angle was extremely critical. 7-Planet Palace Master moved his body and made a narrow escape from the 3 sword lights. 7-Planet Palace Master, why aren't you moving? Jian Wushuang wielded his sword again as he roared. If you do not try your best to kill me, I will kill you without hesitation. You have no choice. Jian Wushuang's roar reverberated in 7-Planet Palace Master's ears, and his face grew grave. Then, there was madness that flashed through his eyes. Rumble. Boundless aura that only a real god expert could give out exploded from Seven Planet Palace Master's body. Seven Planet Palace Master finally wanted to fight back. Looking at the scene, Jian Wushuang's eyes brightened. Chapter 1491. Fighting a Real God. Chapter 1491. Fighting a Real God. A real god. Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly, and his eyes glowed with excitement. He had fought with real gods before. Moreover, 10 of them had fallen by his hands. However, the real gods were those within the Sky Sword prison. Hence, their divine power was restricted to a great extent, and they were unable to display the true abilities of a real god. But at that very moment, the Seven Planet Palace Master in front of him was not under any restrictions. It would be the real fighting capabilities of a real god. Jian Wushuang also wished to experience exactly how strong a genuine real god was. Let's fight! With a shout, Jian Wushuang's figure changed magically and 9 shadows appeared immediately. The 9 shadows plunged across the void with amazing speed, and appeared beside the Seven Planet Palace Master. At the same time, they also swung their swords. Crimson lightning came forth at once. Real god's unique skill, Crimson Light. The Seven Planet Palace Master's eyes squinted slightly. A great amount of divine power moved about, and became a thick layer of black light on his body. The black light was like black armor, which covered the Seven Planet Palace Master's body completely. At the same time, a black long gun appeared on the Seven Planet Palace Master's hands. By cocking the gun and exerting strength upon it, the Seven Planet Master shot the black light directly. Boom! It was as if the universe around the area was affected by the black long gun, and a giant, jaw-dropping black vortex appeared abruptly. The Seven Planet Palace Master also used the unique skill of a real god. Moreover, he had also unleashed his full abilities. Go head-to-head. A head-on confrontation. Bam! The pitch-black long gun and the crimson lightning clashed, and the space broke into pieces. The terrifying divine power then became shockwaves which swept past all areas in a frenzy. This was due to the head-on collision, which generated reverse shockwaves, and they headed toward Jian Wushuang and the Seven Planet Palace Master at the same time. Jian Wushuang's body shook, and he resisted the reverse shockwave easily. What? The Seven Planet Palace Master's expression changed. At that moment, he could not help but retreat a step. It was this retreated step that caused the power of the Seven Planet Palace Master's long gun to be utterly defeated. He is merely a universe god. In a head-to-head battle with one another, he is actually stronger than me? The Seven Planet Palace Master raised his head and looked at Jian Wushuang with shock. He did not know that Jian Wushuang was a universe god of the second heaven. However, due to his inverse cultivation, his divine power had already achieved the peak of a universe god of the third heaven. Moreover, he also possessed the Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor. By activating the secret skill of the Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor, the power that he had released was not very different from a normal real god. The most important thing was still his comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine. His comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine had already reached the stage where he could clear the first level of the Doctrine Palace. But what about the Seven Planet Palace Master? He belonged to real gods of the lowest end, and he had never comprehended even a small portion of power of the heaven way before. With the amplification by the reincarnation power, the full power that Jian Wushuang had released was a tad stronger than the Seven Planet Palace Master. On the battlefield, Jian Wushuang grinned. His Blood Mountain sword followed along the pitch-black long gun of the Seven Planet Palace Master. By slanting his sword slightly, he struck the Seven Planet Palace Master's hands like lightning. The Seven Planet Palace Master was so astonished that he shuddered. Although he wanted to retreat, with a random stride of Jian Wushuang, he appeared in front of the Seven Planet Palace Master. This martial art motion! The Seven Planet Palace Master was astounded. Jian Wushuang had already launched his next attack. His body had changed into a sharp sword. His body served as the back of the sword whilst the Blood Mountain sword served as the edge of the sword. Whoosh! With a simple front pounce, the sword light came forth like the sharp claws of a ferocious beast. Clang! The seven-planet palace master swung his gun continuously to block with difficulty. However, Jian Wushuang turned his body nimbly, and the longsword headed straight for the seven-planet palace master's head. Clang! 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 Intense sounds of collision resounded across the void. Jian Wushuang had either changed into a sharp sword or a ferocious beast. By combining his transformation with the secret skill Flowing Light Phantom, he displayed his ability to fight in close combat. It must be known that he had used a few thousand years to hone his close combat abilities in the Sky Sword Prison. Moreover, he could still combine it with the Flowing Light Phantom, a secret skill of the martial art motion. By using them together, it could be said to be stunning. Too fast. His speed is too fast. His sword principles are also fast. One stroke after another, continuous and unending. This does not give me any opportunity at all. Moreover, his body is abnormal. A real god like me actually cannot find an opportunity to counterattack. The seven-planet palace master's face was filled with fright. He had already displayed the strongest abilities that he had as a real god. His divine power and unique skill, as well as his gun motion, had been unleashed thoroughly. In spite of that, he was still being pushed back by Jian Wushuang. Yes, he was being pushed back. Moreover, he was pushed back in all areas. The seven-planet palace master retreated continuously whilst being pushed back, and he was in an extremely difficult position, to the point that he did not have any chance to counterattack. On the sidelines of the Heavenly Fire Summit, millions of cultivators were looking at the fighting scene with awe. A universe god was fighting with a real god. However, the result was a one-sided match with the real god being pushed back. How is this possible? The seven-planet palace master was infuriated by Jian Wushuang's crazy suppression. With a furious howl, the black armor that the seven-planet palace master wore grew abruptly. In no time, it had transformed into a black giant exotic beast. The black exotic beast had 3 heads, and it was extremely hideous. The seven-planet palace master's eyes turned completely back. The long gun in his hands was brimming with appalling power, and he cocked the gun. Dark heavenly song. Boom! The whole universe turned completely black. Not even the slightest bit of light could be seen. The long gun that had been cocked abruptly became the only focal point of the universe. It was extraordinarily powerful and earth-shaking. Haha, bring it on! Jian Wushuang laughed loudly, and an enormous amount of soul power erupted, forming a giant golden divine ape. As soon as the golden divine ape appeared, it roared fiercely. The giant longsword in its hands followed Jian Wushuang's movement, and was swung abruptly at that very moment. Among the 3 real gods' unique skills that Jian Wushuang created, the skill with the greatest power, 9th Heaven Stroke, a nemesis sword which carried supreme sword essence, descended again. The nemesis sword and the black long gun clashed. Boom! The universe shook. The minds of everyone by the sidelines of the battlefield could not help but ring with the terrifying sound. After the sound had disappeared, the seven-planet palace master gave a groan, and some blood came out of the corners of his mouth. He retreated in an extremely sorry state. As for Jian Wushuang, although he had experienced an extremely strong shockwave, the shockwave was weakened by his blood feather reincarnation armor. By the time it reached his body, it was unable to affect him at all. He still stood firmly in the void and did not move. His aura remained tremendous, and it did not look like it had weakened. The seven-planet palace master had lost the battle. Chapter 1492. His name is well known in the universe. Chapter 1492. His name is well known in the universe. Lost. Seven-planet palace master, a real god, lost? More than 1 million cultivators at the scene were dumbfounded by the outcome. When Jian Wushuang defeated Ling Dan with 1 stroke, they were already astonished. But then, Jian Wushuang had defeated a real god directly, a true real god. Top 20. Fighting power of a top 20 on Universe God ranking list. Definitely do. Only experts in the top 20 on Universe God ranking list have the power to fight against a real god face to face, and be at an advantage, and even defeat a real god. This Jian Wushuang turns out to be a super genius that is qualified to be listed in the top 20 on Universe God ranking list. He's a superb expert. Everyone at the scene, there was a commotion stirred in the bottom of their heart. Universe God ranking list was full of experts. However, to be listed in the top 20 on Universe God ranking list, every one of them were monstrous monsters. Such a monster, they didn't normally get a chance to witness. But then, the cultivators on the spot saw him, and witnessed the battle of a rising monstrous expert. They saw Jian Wushuang's thundering manner, and how he had defeated Ling Dan with their own eyes. They also witnessed how he had defeated the real god expert, 7-Planet Palace Master. They could only imagine Jian Wushuang's name would definitely be famous all across 10 cultivation sanctuaries, and across the entire eternal chaotic world. In the void, Jian Wushuang stood coldly and Blood Mountain sword was sheathed in his scabbard. His gaze was cold as he glanced at 7-Planet Palace Master from afar and said, 7-Planet Palace Master, this is a lesson for you. If there is a next time, you'll suffer Lineage of Star's true rage. The dignity of Lineage of Star definitely isn't something that anyone could provoke. Jian Wushuang's voice reverberated in the universe, and didn't disperse until much later. 7-Planet Palace Master forcefully recovered the churning vital energy and blood in his body, and stole a glance at Jian Wushuang. He heaved a sigh of relief. Although he had lost to Jian Wushuang before everyone, and he had been discredited, the incident came to an end regardless. At least, Lineage of Star wouldn't find trouble with them in the future. Discrediting in exchange of 7-Planet Palace. In exchange for his life, 7-Planet Palace Master was grateful for Jian Wushuang. 7-Planet Palace Master immediately bowed politely before Jian Wushuang to show his respect. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly at his action, and didn't bother with 7-Planet Palace Master, but walked towards Elder Qiu and Hu Feng. Elder Qiu, it has been done. I shall return. Jian Wushuang stood before Elder Qiu. Elder Qiu nodded, his gaze full of admiration. Then, Jian Wushuang immediately left without giving a second look to the surrounding spectators. At the end, Jian Wushuang took another look at Hu Feng. Hu Feng was still in amazement. Until Jian Wushuang had walked far away, he finally came back to reality. He said in surprise, Elder Qiu, Jian Wushuang. No, Senior Jian Wushuang, how can he be that strong? Lineage of Star, one speaks with his power. They were both disciples of Star Palace. Jian Wushuang's power was obviously not something he could compare to favorably. He naturally had to refer him as Senior Jian Wushuang. Strong? Why didn't you look up to him earlier then? You even commented that he wasn't your match. Why? Your attitude has changed entirely, Elder Qiu said playfully. Elder Qiu, don't tease me. How should I know? Senior Jian Wushuang broke through, and became Universe God in the third heaven not too long ago. Plus, he isn't famous at all, but he is so strong. I reckon even Elder Qiu didn't expect it yourself, right? Hu Feng said. Previously, he had really held Jian Wushuang in contempt. However, he had his reasons. After all, Jian Wushuang really did have too short of a time for growth. Forget about him. Among disciples who were universe gods in the third heaven and Lineage of Star, he reckoned not many would be bothered about Jian Wushuang's power. That's true, Elder Qiu nodded. She admitted that although she believed in Hall Master Yuan's arrangement, she was in doubt of Jian Wushuang's power. Until then, she had only understood when Jian Wushuang revealed his true power. Oh yeah, how's Ling Dan? Is he dead? Elder Qiu looked down into the ruin that Heavenly Fire Summit had become. Long Dan was still in the ruin, not knowing if he was alive or dead. Humph, he had the guts to provoke Lineage of Star. Who cares if he's alive or dead? Hu Feng smirked coldly. But Senior Jian Wushuang is really amazing. He defeated Hu Feng with one stroke, and defeated a real god head-on. A true real god. If not mistaken, with Senior Jian Wushuang's power, he is already qualified to be listed in the top 20 on Universe God ranking list. Elder Chio smiled and replied. On Universe God ranking list, only geniuses in the top 20 are capable of defeating a real god. When Jian Wushuang was fighting against 7-Planet Palace Master earlier, he was on the winning side the whole time. With such power, he definitely can be listed in the top 20. Vientiane Tower should receive the news very soon. Then, they'll amend the ranking on Universe God ranking list. This young man will also be well known in the universe. Fame was based on absolutely compelling battle achievements. Just like 4,000 years ago in the Boundless Void, when Jian Wushuang had met Zhao Han, and they had had a vigorous fight. Not many people saw the fight, and the fight was too close to call. Those who watched the battle couldn't determine if Zhao Han had used all his power too. Hence, even if the news travel, no one could determine if Jian Wushuang possessed the fighting power of one on Universe God ranking list. Let alone putting Jian Wushuang on Universe God ranking list after the battle. That was why Jian Wushuang still wasn't famous after the battle. However, it was different then. Then there were 1,000,000 cultivators. Before 1,000,000 pairs of eyes. Jian Wushuang defeated Ling Dan with one stroke, and he was also on a winning streak, and had defeated 7-Planet Palace Master, who was a real god. Everyone approved of Jian Wushuang's battle achievements, and his power naturally could be determined. Just as Elder Chio had said, on the day Jian Wushuang defeated 7-Planet Palace Master, Vientiane Tower received the news, and there were even images of the battle. Vientiane Tower covered all manifestations of the universe. It held an extremely special position in 10 cultivation sanctuaries. The Universe God ranking list and Real God ranking list were created by Vientiane Tower. Then, after they had obtained the image of Jian Wushuang in the battle, the higher-ups in Vientiane Tower watched carefully and determined that Jian Wushuang really did possess the fighting power of one in the top 20 on Universe God ranking list. Hence, very soon, a brand new Universe God ranking list appeared. The brand new Universe God ranking list listed Jian Wushuang as the 20th member. Along with the announcement of the brand new Universe God ranking list, Jian Wushuang's name spread across every single corner of 10 cultivation sanctuaries. Jian Wushuang became truly well known in the universe because of this. Chapter 1493. Number 20 of the Universe God ranking list. Chapter 1493. Number 20 of the Universe God ranking list. Inside a cave created by special gems in the lineage of Star, Hall Master Yuan and the 10 deacons of the lineage of Star had gathered together. Everyone, this is the most updated Universe God ranking list by the Vientiane Tower. Please take a look. Hall Master Yuan smiled and passed down a ranking list. The deacons looked through the ranking list. After some time, they focused their attention on the name in the 20th position of the Universe God ranking list. Jian Wushuang is ranked 20 on the Universe God ranking list. Jian Wushuang? That little kid in our lineage of Star? Number 20, how can this be? After the deacons had seen the rankings, none of them were able to remain calm. Jian Wushuang, during the previous battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace, we saw him display his outstanding talent among the disciples, who were universe gods of the second heaven. After he made a breakthrough and became a universe god of the third heaven later on, we thought that he would still need a period of time before he could get into the Universe God ranking list. But now, in less than 5,000 years, he got into the Universe God ranking list. Moreover, he got into the 20th place straight away. According to our information, Jian Wushuang defeated the 7-Planet Palace Master. We know that although the 7-Planet Palace Master belonged to the lowest end of the real gods, he was still a genuine real god. Haha, top 20 of the Universe God ranking list. How long has it been since a genius disciple, who could get into the top 20 of the Universe God ranking list appeared in the lineage of Star? The previous appearance of such a disciple was 3 million years ago. When Elder Wu was still a universe god, he got into the top 20 of the Universe God ranking list before. I remember that Elder Wu was ranked 19th back then, one rank above Jian Wushuang now. That Elder Wu remained universe god of the third heaven for a total of 300,000 years. Moreover, it was only because of him obtaining many opportunities and treasures that he got into the 19th position of the Universe God ranking list. However, how long has it been since Jian Wushuang made a breakthrough to the Universe God of the third heaven? Comparing talent, it is obvious that he is more talented than Elder Wu. This little kid has an unimaginable future. Many deacons were gasping with admiration, and the whole cave was filled with delighted laughter and cheerful voices. As for Hall Master Yuan, who was the leader, he was also over the moon. Previously, he knew that Jian Wushuang had killed 10 real gods in the Sky Sword prison, and thought that Jian Wushuang had fighting capabilities to get into the top 30 of the Universe God ranking list. However, looking at it then, Jian Wushuang was obviously stronger than he had thought. It is rare for such a genius to appear in the lineage of Star. This is great news. However, keep in mind that we must always protect Jian Wushuang. After all, although the 10 cultivation sanctuaries at moment look peaceful, they have actually been doing something behind the scenes. The lineage of Star also has some dangerous enemies. Hence, there is no guarantee that they will not lay their hands on the geniuses of our lineage of Star, and naturally, Jian Wushuang will be the first to be affected, Hall Master Yuan warned. Naturally, all the deacons present nodded their heads in succession. The lineage of Star had always paid great attention to their disciples, especially the most outstanding Star Palace disciples. Hence, there should be no problem in terms of protection. By the way, Jian Wushuang himself might not even know the news about him making into the 20th position of the Universe God ranking list. Let me send him a message. Hall Master Yuan chuckled and sent this piece of news to Jian Wushuang, who had just returned to the lineage of Star. Inside a secret room in the Sword Star, the complete list of the Universe God ranking list was floating in front of Jian Wushuang. In particular, he was looking at his own introduction. Jian Wushuang. In the Heavenly Sky Summit, he defeated Ling Dan, who was ranked 39th on the Universe God ranking list, with 1 stroke. Afterwards, he had an intense battle with the 7-planet Palace Master, a real god expert. He pushed back the 7-planet Palace Master throughout the whole battle, and finally defeated him in the end. Such powerful abilities have allowed him to get into the top 20 of the Universe God ranking list. However, as he has never fought with the other top 20 experts, he will be ranked in the 20th position in the Universe God ranking list temporarily. Ranked 20th temporarily? Jian Wushuang felt strange. Jian Wushuang, with the abilities that you displayed, you should be able to get into the 16th or 17th position of Universe God ranking list. However, you have never fought with an expert in the 16th and 17th position. In addition, the Vientiane Tower has always been conservative when it comes to the ranking of the Universe God ranking list. Hence, they only placed you at the 20th position. After all, if they had placed you in the 16th or 17th place based on your fighting results, they would be unable to get the trust of everyone. However, by placing you at the 20th position, no one will say anything. As for the temporary part, the Vientiane Tower probably hope that you will come across experts that are of a higher rank, and, after going through a fight, they will raise your ranking. The King of Venomous Worms' voice echoed in Jian Wushuang's head. I see, Jian Wushuang understood. Back then when he had fought with the 7-planet Palace Master, he had more or less used his full power. Although he still had trump cards remaining, there were not many of them. If he had shown all his trump cards, there might be a chance that his fighting capabilities would bring him into the top 15 of the Universe God ranking list. However, top 15 was his limit. He still lacked the power to get into the top 10. According to the information on the Universe God ranking list, the top 10 experts of the list have accomplished the feat of killing a real god. Jian Wushuang clicked his tongue. He had also killed real gods. However, the real gods that he had killed were those whose divine power was restricted, and they were unable to display their full prowess. Hence it was different. As for the real gods that the experts in the top 10 of the Universe God ranking list had killed, all of them were able to release their power to its full extent. However, they were still killed in the end. Therefore, it could be seen how frightening the 10 people in the top 10 of the Universe God ranking list were. The Universe God ranking list had also named them the 10 monsters. Compared to the 10 monsters in the top 10 of the Universe God ranking list, I am still quite a distance away right now. Moreover, I am merely a Universe God of the second heaven. There is still room for my abilities to rise, Jian Wushuang laughed. He was extremely confident in his own abilities. The Jian Wushuang of the very moment was under the restriction of being a Universe God of the second heaven. Hence, his unique skills could no longer be improved. Otherwise, he might be able to compete with the 10 monsters. Moreover, as soon as he got past the third heaven's inverse cultivation test and become a real Universe God of the third heaven, he would be able to go against the 10 monsters easily. My journey is still long. Let me continue to train. Jian Wushuang giggled and put the Universe God ranking list away. As for that Ling Dan, previously, after taking one stroke of Jian Wushuang's, he was seriously wounded. However, he did not die. Due to the fact that he had fought a few times previously, the audience took note of him. The experts of the Vientiane Tower also felt that Ling Dan had the fighting capabilities to get into the top 40s of the Universe God ranking list. Hence, he was ranked 39th. For the next period of time, be it the lineage of star or the movements in the outside world, as a result of getting news about Jian Wushuang did not bother about them. He stayed on the Sword Star to meditate in seclusion so that he could train. In the blink of an eye, another 400 years passed. The battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace in the lineage of Star had arrived. Chapter 1494. Not in the least bit suspenseful. Chapter 1494. Not in the least bit suspenseful. The battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace was held at Titanic Star located in the middle of the Milky Way. The rules of the battle were the same as they had been previously. It was segregated into two parts. The first part was to go through Supreme Tower. The second part was to fight rotation battle. It first began with the disciples who were Universe Gods in the first heaven. Lineage of Star, where many geniuses gathered. The battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace among disciples, who were Universe Gods in the first and second heaven, went extremely ferociously. It lasted for more than half a day's time until it ended. Then, it was finally the disciples who were Universe Gods in the third heaven. Walala! There was a large number of figures that appeared on Titanic Star. In Lineage of Star, disciples who were Universe Gods in the third heaven were obviously many more compared to Universe Gods in the first and second heaven. Among the disciples, there was one who was extremely conspicuous. It was Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang. That's Senior Jian Wushuang. The superb existence of a top 20 member of the Universe God ranking list. Outside of Titanic Star, many Universe Gods in the first heaven and second heaven looked over at Jian Wushuang in admiration and reverence. While surrounding Jian Wushuang, the disciples who were Universe Gods in the third heaven were staring at Jian Wushuang. Hu Feng, when Jian Wushuang fought against Ling Dan and Seven Planet Palace Master, you were there too. Is he really strong enough to deserve being placed in the top 20 on Universe God ranking list? A brawny man in red armor asked. The brawny man was the one who was previously in the first place among disciples in Lineage of Star, Longya. He was also an expert on Universe God ranking list, and at number 51, he was widely recognized as the top member in Lineage of Star. However, due to the rise of Jian Wushuang, the top place in Lineage of Star had naturally fallen to Jian Wushuang. How can I put this? Senior Jian Wushuang should be even stronger than his given ranking on Universe God ranking list, Hu Feng said solemnly. I watched the fight between Senior Jian Wushuang and Seven Planet Palace Master with my own eyes. He, who is just a Universe God, cornered Seven Planet Palace Master and caused him to be in a fix. He forced Seven Planet Palace Master to perform his strongest unique skill. Even so, he was defeated by Senior Jian Wushuang head-on. If it wasn't for the fact that Senior Jian Wushuang has never fought against the top 20 geniuses on Universe God ranking list, he could even be on the 16th or 17th on Universe God ranking list. That amazing. Longya and Xianyi next to him exchanged a look, and both shook their heads in silence. Jian Wushuang only broke through and became a universe god in the third heaven for less than 5,000 years, and he has already become this strong. In the future, he definitely has extremely great room for improvement. Who knows, he might stand a chance to stand side by side with the 10 monsters. Longya complimented. It's really possible. At least, he isn't someone both of us could match evenly, Xianyi agreed. The two of them were experts on Universe God ranking list too. However, they well understood the difference in the rankings of Universe God ranking list. The top 10, top 20, and those below rank 30 were three entirely different tiers. Jian Wushuang. Someone called. The elegant-looking Ling Feibai walked before Jian Wushuang. You amazed the world with a single brilliant feat. I asked you if you were confident about the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace previously, and you told me you were sort of confident. But in the end, you gained fame in one battle, and got listed in the top 20 on Universe God ranking list. Ling Feibai complimented as he sighed emotionally in his head. When he heard the news previously about Jian Wushuang being listed in the top 20 on Universe God ranking list, he had got a shock. One should know that he had fought against Jian Wushuang during the last battle, to become a disciple of the Star Palace. Then, both of them had broken through, and became Universe God in the third heaven. Ling Feibai thought that although Jian Wushuang would become stronger, he thought the distance between them wouldn't be so vast. But who knew that Jian Wushuang would amaze the world with his great achievements? Ling Feibai, I finally understand your feelings when you participated the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace 5,000 years ago, Jian Wushuang joked. Ling Feibai raised his eyebrows and teased. How is it? A great feeling, huh? So, Jian Wushuang shrugged. In the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace 5,000 years ago, out of disciples who were Universe God in the third heaven, Ling Feibai was widely recognized as the number one. His power made the rest of the disciples who were Universe Gods in the second heaven hopeless. They didn't blindly strive to keep up with Ling Feibai. Things was lonely at the top back then. But Jian Wushuang was at the same state as Ling Feibai then. Compared to the other disciples who were Universe God in the third heaven around him, he was at a totally different level. No one had the intention to compete with him. Even Longya and Xianyi had no intention to contest and see who was better. To me, the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace is meaningless. It'd be best if it ends sooner, Jian Wushuang thought to himself. Very soon, the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace for disciples who were Universe God in the third heaven started. The disciples took turns to enter Supreme Tower, and Jian Wushuang naturally went in too. In the end, Jian Wushuang stayed in Supreme Tower for a total of 103 breaths before he came out. Compared to Longya, who was second, he had stayed for 40 extra breaths. There's a difference of 40 breaths. The distance is too vast. Longya shook his head in silence. Hall Master Yuan outside of Titanic Star in Milky Way, and the other Deacon Elderlies, saw the scene of Jian Wushuang going through Supreme Tower clearly. They were all astonished by the sight. This Jian Wushuang is impressive when it comes to close combat. Yes, not only that, his techniques are very amazing. Most importantly, his comprehension towards reincarnation doctrine is too high. If I'm not mistaken, his comprehension towards reincarnation doctrine should already be able to pass through the first level of Doctrine Palace. He's really amazing. After passing through Supreme Tower, it was followed by rotation battle. The rotation battle ended in merely 4 hours. Jian Wushuang naturally won 9 out of 9 battles and took first place. No one was shocked by the result. Everything was natural, not in the least bit suspenseful. In the cave dwelling, Jian Wushuang stood before Hall Master Yuan. Jian Wushuang, according to the rules and lineage of Star, those who performed outstandingly in the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace will receive an extra bonus. During the previous battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace, I gave you the exquisite mirror as a reward to help you pass through the second inverse cultivation test. This time, your reward is a month's cultivation time in Real God Hall. What do you think? Hall Master Yuan looked at Jian Wushuang. Sure. Jian Wushuang nodded without hesitation. A chance to cultivate in Real God Hall was hard to come by in Lineage of Star. Previously, when I completed the Ultimate Disciple task, I received 3 months cultivation time in Real God Hall. In addition to this 1 month's time, I have a total of 4 months. It is not a short time at all. Maybe I can head to a Real God Hall for cultivation. Jian Wushuang was beaming with joy. After he left Hall Master Yuan's, Jian Wushuang came to Real God Hall directly. The deacon elderly guarding Real God Hall had already received Hall Master Yuan's message and knew that Jian Wushuang would be qualified to enter Real God Hall for cultivation. He naturally didn't stop Jian Wushuang. Chapter 1495, The Mysterious White Fruit. Chapter 1495, The Mysterious White Fruit. Jian Wushuang was sitting with his legs crossed in the vast Heavenway River in the Real God Hall. He could feel that his surroundings were filled with a tremendous amount of the power of Heavenway. The Supreme Four Doctrine and the 9 Heaven God Doctrine were all within the Heavenway River. Previously, I only stayed at the Real God Hall for a month, and I comprehended a portion of the reincarnation power. Hence, my abilities skyrocketed. This time round, I have 4 months, which is a lot more time. In these 4 months, I cannot even waste a second. Jian Wushuang's eyes were glowing brilliantly. He closed his eyes soon after, and began his comprehension with great concentration. During his comprehension, time passed by. The eternal chaotic world was boundless, and had no limits. Hence, it contained all kinds of wonderful things. Within this far-reaching land, an extremely valuable treasure was hidden. The Red Dragon Sanctuary of the 10 Cultivation Sanctuaries. There was a vast sea with waves surging forward with great momentum. This sea was a big, perilous place in the Red Dragon Sanctuary, and it was known as the Wind-Fire Sea. The Wind-Fire Sea was extremely dangerous, and even the sea water was dyed the color of blood. At that moment, within a normal island that no one was aware of in the middle of the Wind-Fire Sea, boom! A piercing voice burst forth fiercely, and the whole island shook violently, as if the universe was shaking. Under the tremendous shaking, whiz, 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 3 shadows plunged out from the deepest part of the island, and it was only until they were in the void millions of miles away from the island that they stopped. Among the 3 of them, there were 2 men and 1 woman. At that very moment, they were puffing and panting. At the same time, they were also looking in the direction of the island with an extremely horrified look. Too frightening, that place is too frightening. Among the 3 of them, the red-clothed woman, who was the only woman, muttered. 3rd sibling, 5th sibling and the 6th sibling have died. Only the 3 of us walked out alive. The slim, bald young man clenched both his fists tightly. His face was filled with sorrow. This is all my fault. I underestimated how dangerous that place was. Previously, I thought that that was only a cave left behind by a normal expert. But who could expect that? Among the 3 of them, the old man, who was the leader of the group, was wearing silver armor, and he had the ghastliest expression. Both the red-clothed woman and the bald young man looked at the silver-armored old man. However, they could only shake their heads. They knew that this matter was decided by the 3 of them, and it was not the idea of the silver-armored old man alone. Since things have already become as such, there is no use regretting it. Second brother, didn't you get a fruit just now? Take it out and let us have a look, the red-clothed woman said. The bald young man's expression changed. With a wave of his hand, he took out a sweet-smelling white fruit. The white fruit was extremely delicate and pure. It's this fruit that got the 3 of them killed. The bald young man stared at the white fruit, and his eyes were glowing fiercely. We have never seen nor heard of this fruit before. However, I have a feeling that this fruit is special, the silver-armored old man said. I have this feeling as well. The red-clothed woman nodded her head as well. First brother, what do we do with this fruit? The bald young man looked toward the silver-armored old man. The silver-armored old man muttered to himself for some time, and spoke after that. We have no idea what this fruit is, nor its uses. Hence, it would be a waste to keep it with us. Therefore, we should sell it to someone who knows about it. Someone who knows about this fruit? Both the red-clothed women and the bald young man each revealed a puzzled expression. The Vientiane Tower. The silver-armored old man's eyes were glowing brilliantly. In a secret room of the Vientiane Tower, the silver-armored old man took out the mysterious white fruit and handed it over to the branch owner of the Vientiane Tower for inspection. However, even the owner did not know about the background of the mysterious white fruit. My guests, please wait a moment. I will send the information of this fruit to the higher-ups, and the high-level experts of the Vientiane Tower will appraise the fruit personally, the branch owner of the Vientiane Tower said. Understood. The silver-armored old man pocketed the mysterious white fruit and waited at his position quietly. After an hour, the branch owner of the Vientiane Tower took out a token and broke it into pieces. Boom! A strong aura burst forth and became a big and dim shadow. Next, a pair of sharp eyes which could pierce through everything appeared. This is Tower Master Chi Fu of the Vientiane Tower, the second in charge of the Red Dragon Sanctuary. The branch owner himself, who took out the token, was surprised as well. The second in charge of the Red Dragon Sanctuary, Tower Master Chi Fu. He was an expert of the highest level of the Vientiane Tower, and his consciousness had actually come down personally. Greetings to Tower Master Chi Fu. The branch owner bowed and greeted him immediately. Where is that fruit? An extremely dignified voice could be heard from the enormous shadow. My lord, the fruit is with me. The silver-armored old man took out the mysterious white fruit, and his voice was very respectful. He could tell that the big shadow was a super expert who could shake the world. As expected, it's that fruit. When the big shadow saw that mysterious white fruit, his eyes glowed with a substance-like light immediately. After that, he shot a glance at the silver-armored old man and frowned. A universe god? Yes. The silver-armored old man felt a bit fearful. He was indeed a universe god. However, he was a universe god who stood at the peak of the third heaven. However, he was still very far away from the universe god ranking list. A mere universe god can actually find such a treasure. After muttering to himself for some time, the big shadow said with dignity, I will give you two choices now. Firstly, hand this fruit over to the Vientiane Tower. In addition, tell us everything you know about this fruit, including how and where you obtained it. After that, the Vientiane Tower will give you 200 million chaos gems. As for you, you must forget everything you know about this fruit from today onward. Secondly, the fruit will still remain in the Vientiane Tower, but you refuse to say anything. The Vientiane Tower will not blame you for that. However, after you leave, I guarantee you that countless experts from the 10 cultivation sanctuaries who stand at the top will think of all kinds of ways to find you and get you to spit out information of the fruit, even if they have to hack you into pieces. Among these two choices, pick one of them. My lord, I choose the first choice. The silver-armored old man picked the first choice without hesitation. He could also tell how important the fruit was. Hence, he would naturally not dare to withhold any information, even though he knew that the fruit was extraordinarily valuable, and it could not be compared to a mere 200 million chaos gems. He agreed without hesitation, and dared not bargain at all. 200 million chaos gems is more than all the family keepsakes and valuables of a real god. For a universe god like me to obtain so many chaos gems is more than enough. If I were to ask for more, I would just be asking for death. The silver-armored old man was clear about this point. Speak. Chapter 1496, Emergency Summon. Chapter 1496, Emergency Summon. After he had shared everything he knew about the mysterious white fruit, the silver-armored old man took the 200 million chaos gems and left. After that, he and his two brothers found a concealed place to hide. For 100,000 years, they would be off the trail. In a lofty tower, Tower Master Chi Fu, who had only revealed his consciousness shadow in Vientiane Tower's sub-branch previously, was standing there in person. White blaze fruit. It's really white blaze fruit. According to what the universe god said earlier, the place where he got the white blaze fruit is most likely a cave dwelling that was left behind by an expert. There was light shimmering in Tower Master Chifu's eyes. He thought for a while, and he took out one token after another. Holy Emperor Jiuyu, weren't you looking for a white blaze fruit all this while? Vientiane Tower found one for you. Emperor Qi Yin, let me tell you good news. It's about white blaze fruit. Owner of Sky Sword Mountain, Tower Master Chifu sent out a dozen messages in a short while. The people that he sent messages to were all top experts on high positions in eternal chaotic world. For instance, Holy Emperor Jiuyu, Emperor Qi Yin, owner of Sky Sword Mountain. They were all almighties. After they received the messages, the dozens of almighties were all excited. The news has spread. Vientiane Tower has already received enough advantages. As for how the almighties want to fight for it, that is their concern. Tower Master Chifu smiled maliciously. Go ahead and fight. The fiercer the fight, the more ferocious the fight, the better. Vientiane Tower will be here watching all of you fight. Haha. In Lineage of Star, after the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace ended, Jian Wushuang entered Real God Hall to cultivate. In the blink of an eye, 4 months' time flew past. The door of Real God Hall opened and Jian Wushuang walked out slowly. When he walked out of the Real God Hall, Jian Wushuang was obviously smiling, and he was rather delighted. At first, during the time of comprehension of 4 months, I wanted to improve my comprehension level of reincarnation doctrine. Who would have guessed? I didn't improve much on reincarnation doctrine, but achieved beginner level in space-time doctrine. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Back when he had entered Real God Hall to comprehend the doctrine for the first time, he could feel that his response towards reincarnation doctrine was the clearest. It was also the easiest to comprehend. Hence, he had fully concentrated and comprehended reincarnation doctrine for 1 month. In turn, he had mastered a slight bit of power of reincarnation. However, besides reincarnation doctrine, the other clearest response he had received was towards space-time doctrine. During the 4 months' time of comprehension, he was finally at the beginner level of comprehension of space-time doctrine, and he had mastered a slight bit of power of reincarnation. In other words, he then understood both reincarnation and space-time doctrines simultaneously. He had mastered 2 power of heaven way at the same time. Space-time doctrine is about space-time. It is unfathomable. Although I have only mastered a slight bit of power of space-time, and it is far behind my understanding towards reincarnation doctrine, the slight bit of power of space-time is sufficient to increase my moving speed, swordsmanship, and many other aspects tremendously. Even in terms of power, when the 2 power of heaven way are amplified together, it will also increase madly. Jian Wushuang clenched his fists. Comprehension of an extra doctrine no doubt brought about a huge improvement in his overall power. Space-time doctrine could cover many different areas and lead to an increase in power in various aspects. Previously, I was not confident enough to compete with the 10 monsters in the top 10 on Universe God ranking list. But now, Jian Wushuang lifted the corners of his lips while he gave a chilly smile. Jian Wushuang. A hoary voice was heard, and the one who spoke was the deacon elderly who guarded Real God Hall. Hall Master Yuan sent me a message earlier, and commanded me to inform you to see him immediately after you came out of Real God Hall. He is looking for you for an urgent matter. Oh, Jian Wushuang was surprised. For the past 4 months, he had stayed in Real God Hall for cultivation, and Hall Master knew about it. Hence, Hall Master Yuan didn't send any messages to him or bother him, but told the deacon elderly to inform him instead. Jian Wushuang, of course, didn't delay any further, but immediately departed to the cave dwelling that Hall Master Yuan resided in. In the cave dwelling made of unique crystals. Jian Wushuang, how did the cultivation in Real God Hall for 4 months go? Hall Master Yuan smiled and asked Jian Wushuang. Not bad. My power has increased compared to before, Jian Wushuang replied. Your power increased again? Hall Master Yuan looked delighted and he continued. That's great. There's something that I need you to do. The stronger you are, the higher the chance. Hall Master Yuan, what is it about? Jian Wushuang asked. The story starts from a unique treasure. The treasure is a fruit, named White Blaze Fruit. Have you heard of it? Hall Master Yuan looked down. White Blaze Fruit. Jian Wushuang shook his head, but King of Venomous Worms in his body was caught by surprise. White Blaze Fruit? There's a White Blaze Fruit? King of Venomous Worms, you know about White Blaze Fruits? Jian Wushuang asked. Of course, it is a very precious and rare treasure. King of Venomous Worms sounded excited. Hall Master Yuan continued. This White Blaze Fruit is very precious. Even to Almighties it is rather useful. There are countless genius treasures in eternal chaotic world, but out of all of them, White Blaze Fruit is absolutely in the top 10. What? Jian Wushuang was astonished. One that could be in the top 10 among all genius treasures in the entire eternal chaotic world. Extremely useful to Almighties. The White Blaze Fruit was so precious. The more precious and the more useful a treasure is, the more difficult it is to nurture. During an ancient time that was far away, there was once a White Blaze Fruit tree. The White Blaze Fruit tree ripened and fell in various corners in eternal chaotic world. Later on, the White Blaze Fruit tree was destroyed. Since then, White Blaze Fruit has been near to extinction. Over the years we found one or two occasionally but very rarely. A few thousand years ago, in a unique environment, there was a brand new White Blaze Fruit tree, and it was only a sapling. Once the news spread, it immediately attracted a large amount of experts, including many Almighties. They participated in the fight for the sapling of the White Blaze Fruit tree. After a ferocious battle, the sapling of the White Blaze Fruit tree was won by real God Wu Bei in the end. Real God? Jian Wushuang was shocked. A battle among many Almighties, but the sapling had fallen into the hands of a real God? How was that possible? If he was an inverse cultivator? Hall Master Yuan looked at Jian Wushuang and said. Jian Wushuang stunned. Inverse cultivation was beyond comparison with one on the same level. A real God who was an inverse cultivator taking the treasure from the hands of many Almighties. It wasn't impossible. Real God Wu Bei happens to be an inverse cultivator on the real God level. He was extremely strong, and no weaker than the Almighties. After the battle, he took the sapling of the White Blaze Fruit tree under the watch of all Almighties. The Almighties couldn't do anything to him, Hall Master Yuan said. Chapter 1497 Wu Bei's Cave. Chapter 1497 Wu Bei's Cave. After acquiring the sapling of the White Blaze Fruit tree, real God Wu Bei went into hiding and no one knew where he was. Naturally, no one knew what had happened to the sapling of the White Blaze Fruit tree either. It wasn't until later on that a great battle broke out, and it lasted for a long period of time. Real God Wu Bei lost his life in this great battle, and the information regarding the sapling of the White Blaze Fruit tree was gone. Up until now, when millions of years have passed, no one knew where that sapling of the White Blaze Fruit was. However, a month ago, the Vientiane Tower obtained a White Blaze Fruit. At the same time, they found out that the White Blaze Fruit was found in a cave that was concealed cleverly. There is a high possibility that that cave was left behind by real God Wu Bei. As soon as the news got out, many Almighties in the 10 cultivation sanctuaries were astounded, Hall Master Yuan said. Jian Wushuang could imagine the situation. The White Blaze Fruit was already so precious. Hence, the sapling of the White Blaze Fruit tree was more than enough to cause many Almighties to fight for it crazily. Since the cave left behind by real God Wu Bei had been discovered, and the sapling of the White Blaze Fruit might be inside, it would be strange if the Almighties were not shaken up. Since so many Almighties had been shaken up, the fight for the sapling of the White Blaze Fruit tree would definitely be between them. Hence, how is this related to us? Jian Wushuang said doubtfully. So many Almighties were participating in the fight for the sapling, and he was merely a universe god. Hence, why would he head to the cave and fight with the Almighties? This matter is not as easy as you think, Hall Master Yuan laughed and said. I have just said that real God Wu Bei's abilities are extraordinary, and he has many tricks up his sleeve. Now it has been confirmed that the cave was left behind by him. However, he set up a very special seal. The seal is extremely high class, and it is not known where it came from. Moreover, the Almighties in the eternal chaotic world are completely helpless against the seal as they cannot break it. Due to the presence of the seal, Almighties and real gods are unable to enter the cave. Only real gods and below, meaning universe gods like you, are permitted to enter. Only universe gods are permitted to enter? Jian Wushuang was surprised. Why did real God Wu Bei leave behind this kind of seal? Who knows? Since the Almighties are blocked off from the cave, they have no choice but to allow universe gods like you to enter the cave and fight for the white blaze fruit. The most important thing is to fight for the white blaze fruit tree, Hall Master Yuan said. Understood. Hall Master Yuan, you looked for me this round as you wanted me to enter real God Wu Bei's cave and fight for the white blaze fruit, Jian Wushuang said. That's right. White blaze fruit is very useful to Almighties. My family's palace master has some use for it as well. Since there is an opportunity to obtain it, we would naturally not miss it, Hall Master Yuan chuckled. Also, even if there were no white blaze fruits in the cave that real God Wu Bei left behind, you would still have to make a trip there. You're right. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. Real God Wu Bei was an inverse cultivator. By relying on the inverse cultivation methods, he had achieved the peak of a real god, and could even compete with the Almighties. As for Jian Wushuang, the inverse cultivation method heavenly creation skill that he possessed could only be honed to the level of the universe gods. He had never possessed training methods higher than that of the level of universe gods. Without the method, even if his abilities were enough, he would forever be unable to make a breakthrough and become a real god. Previously, Jian Wushuang had already made plans. After making it through the third heaven's inverse cultivation test, he would depend on the lineage of Star and the Vientiane Tower to find the cultivation method for the heavenly creation skill of the real god's level. At that very moment, real God Wu Bei's cave was in sight. Inside the cave, Jian Wushuang might have a chance to obtain what he wanted. All right, if there is nothing else, you should make a move immediately, Hall Master Yuan said. Understood. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. Without any delay, he made a move and headed toward Wu Bei's cave. The Wind-Fire Sea of the Red Dragon Sanctuary. The cave, which was originally unheard of, was filled with people at that moment. Many experts gathered in the island. Those experts include a great number of real gods and a decent number of Almighties. However, it was a pity that Wu Bei's cave had only allowed universe gods to enter. Hence, even though the real gods and Almighties possessed exceptional abilities, they could only stay outside the cave and watch. The most they could do was send some universe gods into the cave and help them fight for the white blaze fruit. Russell, when Jian Wushuang arrived at the island, he was surprised by the situation on the island. So many experts. Jian Wushuang spread his soul power, and he could feel that in the island, hundreds of real gods had gathered. In addition, most of the real gods were extremely strong. As for the Almighties, Jian Wushuang's soul power was still unable to sense the existence of the Almighties. Aside from being filled with admiration, Jian Wushuang focused his attention on a space passage in the deepest part of the island. That is the entrance to enter Wu Bei's cave. After mumbling to himself, Jian Wushuang flew up and plunged toward the entrance. Quite a number of people on the island had noticed the arrival of Jian Wushuang. Another universe god has come. By the looks of this universe god, it seems to be Jian Wushuang, who is ranked 20 on the universe god ranking list. Yes, it's Jian Wushuang, a Star Palace disciple of the lineage of Star. Hehe, the lineage of Star is far away at the Purple Moon Sanctuary. However, they are also interested in Wu Bei's cave. Previously, they sent Long Ye and Xian Yi, the two disciples who have made it onto the universe god ranking list. At the very moment, they have also sent Jian Wushuang over. Could it be that they are not scared that the three of them will die in this fight? Some of the experts on the island were sighing. However, they were not too concerned. This fight for the white blaze fruit involved many almighties. With these almighties taking action, many experts on the Universe God ranking list were invited. Although Jian Wushuang was ranked in the top 20 on the Universe God ranking list, among the experts of the Universe God ranking list who were participating in this fight, there were a few of them with rankings higher than his. Buzz. After passing through the entrance in the deepest part of the island, Jian Wushuang arrived in a vast and independent space. The independent space was similar to the outside world. There was a sun in the sky, mountains, forests, and water were present as well. Jian Wushuang, Long Yan Xianyi entered Wu Bei's cave a month ago. I have also tidied up some information and sent it to you. Please take a look. This information contains what happened to Long Yan Xianyi in Wu Bei's cave over the month, as well as the basic situation of this cave. Hall Master Yuan messaged. Also, Lei Chao is about to go to the island personally. At that time, he will pay attention to what is happening outside from time to time. This includes which experts of the Universe God has come as well as the changes in the cave. He will also send all this information to you immediately. Understood. Jian Wushuang nodded his head and cut off the transmission. Although a special seal exists in Wu Bei's cave, communication with the outside world is not completely cut off. Within this cave, we are still able to communicate with the people in the outside world, Jian Wushuang muttered. Chapter 1498 Grand Banquet. Chapter 1498 Grand Banquet. Many mystery lands and some unique places, such as Skysword Prison, had sealed off connection with the outside world entirely. But Wu Bei's cave obviously hadn't. Jian Wushuang immediately started going through the information that Hall Master Yuan had sent over. Very soon, he had a rough idea about Wu Bei's cave. Firstly, regarding the experts. Since the news about Wu Bei's cave had spread until then, there were many almighties that were shaken by the news. However, the almighties couldn't enter Wu Bei's cave personally. Hence, they could only make use of their influence and send the universe gods under their command to enter Wu Bei's cave. Some almighties had even paid a high price to hire experts on universe god ranking lists, including universe gods who were extremely famous, to participate. Each and every force and sect in the 10 cultivation sanctuaries did the same too. Besides, there were even people passing a message that they had promised to give a real god chaos unique treasure in exchange for white blaze fruit. The real god chaos unique treasure was not limited by category. In other words, one could also request a real god chaos unique realm treasure with one white blaze fruit. Many forces were willing to do the trade. As such, countless universe gods in 10 cultivation sanctuaries heard the news and came, including a large number of solo experts. Regardless of if they were famous or not, they all participated in the battle for white blaze fruit. It had only been 1 month's time since the news had spread, but there were more than 100,000 universe gods who entered Wu Bei's cave. The 100,000 universe gods were not any ordinary universe gods. Every one of them was confident in their power. The weakest among them should be a peak universe god of the third heaven. As for the stronger ones, experts who were listed on the universe god ranking list, there were at least 60 of them in the place, and there were many who were on their way there. It could be described as a grand fight banquet of universe gods in 10 cultivation sanctuaries. An unprecedented grand banquet. Almost 100,000 top universe god are gathered here, and there are many more universe gods on their way here. Jian Wushuang looked around and sighed in amazement. In the eternal chaotic world, probably only when the involvement of the almighties, and also the temptation of real god chaos unique treasure, could attract so many top universe gods. If I'm not mistaken, some of the universe gods aren't here for white blaze fruits but for fame. This grand banquet attracted half of the experts on universe god ranking list that are hard to meet on normal days. With all eyes watching, with all experts gathered, one only need to slightly reveal their power to be famous all over the universe. Plus, some might even be looked upon by real gods and almighties outside of the cave dwelling, and become their disciples. To many universe gods who aren't famous, It is a great attraction for them, King of Venomous Worms said. If I have never joined lineage of Star and I am not famous, I'll definitely participate in this grand banquet without hesitation. After all, it is the grandest banquet for universe gods level in eternal chaotic world. If one were to miss the grand banquet, it would be a chance hard to come by again in the future. Jian Wushuang smiled. Jian Wushuang, you're quite famous now. As you came to Wu Bei's cave, I'm afraid many people might eye you. It is inevitable that there will be people who come to challenge you. You'd better be prepared, King of Venomous Worms. I prepared long ago. Tell them to bring it on, Jian Wushuang smiled. Almost 100,000 universe gods. It was a large number, but they were then scattered all over Wu Bei's cave. The universe gods were scattered all around the cave dwelling to look for an exotic beast, Iron Wing Beast. The exotic beast was very rare in Eternal Chaotic World too. However, there was quite a large number of them in Wu Bei's cave. No one knew how real God Wu Bei had got them. In the Iron Wing Beast's body, there were very few who had a Qian Kuan ring with them, and there was white blaze fruit in the Qian Kuan ring. The universe gods in Wu Bei's cave was then looking for those Iron Wing Beasts wantonly, and trying to kill them to get the Qian Kuan ring in the Iron Wing Beasts' bodies. He put white blaze fruits in the stomach of those Iron Wing Beasts. On top of that, not every Iron Wing Beast carries them. Real God Wu Bei is quite strange, Jian Wushuang muttered. Then he started searching the cave dwelling too. Virum. A boundless soul power spread recklessly and permeated the surrounding 10,000-mile range. The 10,000-mile range that he had covered appeared before Jian Wushuang clearly. Within the 10,000-mile range that I covered, there are 8 universe gods. It is so crowded, Jian Wushuang frowned. Although the cave dwelling was spacious, it was naturally crowded when 100,000 people were scattered all around. In such a crowded environment, even if I found an Iron Wing Beast first, the very moment I launch an attack, my movement will definitely attract the surrounding universe god. By then a fight will be inevitable. That'd be a little troublesome, Jian Wushuang thought to himself. In the independent space, he was at an extremely great advantage. His advantage was because of his soul power. According to the information that Hall Master Yuan had sent, the aura of Iron Wing Beast was unique. One would not notice them if they only covered the area with consciousness, and only probed inch by inch with consciousness carefully. However, the process of probing inch by inch was very slow. Just like back then in Sky Sword Prison, when Blood Emperor had invited Heartless King to help to look for Jian Wushuang within the 1 billion mile range. Even Heartless King, who was a real god and good at consciousness attacks, required a long time to probe a 1,000,000-mile range inch by inch. It was naturally even more difficult if the universe gods in the independent space wanted to probe inch by inch. Hence, even though there were more than 100,000 of universe gods who had stayed for more than a month, but they didn't probe many places. Many Iron Wing Beasts remained hidden. On the other hand, if Jian Wushuang were to probe using soul power, it would definitely be easier by 1,000-fold for him than the other universe gods. It was a pity that in the situation where the experts were scattered and so densely populated, even if he was the first who found the Iron Wing Beast, it wouldn't be easy to get the Qian Kuan ring in the Iron Wing Beast. Regardless, let's find an Iron Wing Beast first. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly and immediately started searching wantonly in the independent space. Swoosh! Jian Wushuang's figure pierced the void like a flowing light. While he plunged through the void, his soul power probed the surrounding thousands of miles, and he confirmed that there weren't any Iron Wing Beasts. While Jian Wushuang traveled at such terrifying speed, universe gods that he flew by were shocked. Such a swift speed. This person can't be looking for Iron Wing Beasts. Otherwise, he wouldn't be traveling at that speed. The universe gods didn't know that when Jian Wushuang flew past them, he had already swept through their surrounding area. Chapter 1499, Iron Wing Beast. Chapter 1499, Iron Wing Beast. At the island where Wu Bei's cave was situated. Swoosh! A red-robed woman with a bewitching figure arrived. The red-robed young girl was carrying a giant black sickle. After taking a glance at the entrance of the cave, she plunged into it immediately. On the island, many experts revealed a shocked expression after seeing the red-robed young girl. That's demon girl Ling Luo. It's her. She actually came as well. Those experts sent a message to the universe gods in the cave immediately. Jian Wushuang also received Lei Chao's message in a split second. Demon girl Ling Luo? The monster ranked number 3 on the universe god ranking list? Jian Wushuang's eyes twinkled slightly. When the news of Wu Bei's cave got out, many universe gods came in succession. Even the 10 monsters in the top 10 of the universe god ranking list were attracted as well. From the start, 4 of the top 10 of the universe god ranking list had come. Demon girl Ling Luo had the highest ranking as of the very moment. The person ranked 3rd has come. I wonder if the 2 monsters ranked 1st and 2nd respectively will come? Jian Wushuang laughed indifferently. He was filled with a bit of anticipation. On the 4th day after Jian Wushuang entered Wu Bei's cave. Jian Wushuang stopped on a void. The soul power that he had released had detected the presence of an iron wing beast that was 10,000 miles away in front of him. After entering this cave, I have been using soul power to search. In 3 days, the distance that I have covered has already exceeded hundreds of millions of miles, and finally, I have discovered an iron wing beast. Jian Wushuang laughed apathetically. He wanted to check if the body of the iron wing beast still contained a Qiankuan ring. However, before his soul power was able to permeate the iron wing beast, it was blocked by a special power. I can't check it now. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly. As his soul power was unable to seep into the body of the iron wing beast, he was unable to determine if the body of the iron wing beast still contained the white blaze fruit. Moreover, Jian Wushuang also realized that in the surrounding area, there were 7 other universe gods apart from him. Among the 7 universe gods, the one furthest away from him was more than 30,000 miles away, while the one closest to him was less than 5,000 miles away. In such a close vicinity, as soon as he attacked the iron wing beast, the 7 universe gods would realize immediately and rush over rapidly. Although it's troublesome, there's no other way. I have to do it. Jian Wushuang's eyes shone fiercely. In the next moment, his body had already made a beeline for the iron wing beast that his soul energy had marked. The iron wing beast had got its name due to the fact that its whole body was filled with completely black scales like pieces of iron. The scales covered its whole body just like a layer of iron armor. However, it did not have wings. The iron wing beast had a small body and 4 hooves. At that moment, there was an iron wing beast strolling about in a thick forest. Jian Wushuang hid his own presence and showed up in the forest quietly. As he looked at the iron wing beast, which was only hundreds of meters away from him, he took out the Blood Mountain sword and headed over silently. Jian Wushuang naturally covered the hundreds of meters in an instant. However, when Jian Wushuang was 10 miles behind the iron wing beast, which was taking a walk leisurely, became terrified abruptly and turned vigilant instantly. Die! Jian Wushuang stopped concealing his aura. His frightening sword essence burst forth, and the Blood Mountain sword on his hands became crimson lightning instantly. His divine power was released as well. Real God's unique skill, Crimson Light. Roar! The iron wing beast gave off a furious and loud roar. It then turned its body swiftly. While it was turning its body, one of its front claws attacked quickly as well. Likewise, its front claws were composed of the pitch-black scales. In spite of that, it was exceptionally sharp like a saber. Clang! The sounds of metals colliding with one another could be heard. The black scales on the front claws of the iron wing beast were cut off. The crimson lightning that Jian Wushuang unleashed paused for a short moment and struck the iron wing beast's body soon after. Roar! A shrill neigh could be heard from the iron wing beast, and this voice was very unconventional. With its small body, the iron wing beast retreated immediately. It's actually not dead? Jian Wushuang's eyes turned grave. Previously he had obtained some information. Hence, he knew that the iron wing beast had strong defense. Moreover, they were very agile. As such, a normal peak universe god of the third heaven would be helpless against them, even if they were to come across one. However, Jian Wushuang did not expect the Iron Wing Beast's defense to be so strong. He had released all his divine power, which was combined with reincarnation power. With that, he unleashed the Crimson Light. However, he still didn't manage to kill the Iron Wing Beast. Swoosh! A black, glittering light appeared quickly. It was the Iron Wing Beast. Trying to escape? Jian Wushuang's expression turned cold. He unleashed his speed, and at the same time, the blaze quicksand gourd flew over, and used all its power to prevent the Iron Wing Beast from escaping. This Iron Wing Beast's speed is faster than that of a normal universe god of the third heaven. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes slightly, and the first stage of the secret skill of Dragon Blood was already activated. At that moment, when Jian Wushuang attacked the Iron Wing Beast, his shocking sword essence and vast divine power started to spread around. Within tens of thousands of miles of Jian Wushuang, the 7 universe gods sensed the sword essence and divine power at the same time. What a strong sword essence! Someone is fighting in this area. Over there. Could it be 2 cultivators fighting, or could it be someone has found an Iron Wing Beast? No matter what, I have to head there straight away. The 7 universe gods did not hesitate, and hurried over to the forest instantly. Swoosh! Swoosh! 2 figures, one in front and one behind, plunged out of the forest in a flash. However, the distance between the both of them was closing at an amazing speed. It's an Iron Wing Beast. Haha, I have finally come across one. One person alone is actually able to push back the Iron Wing Beast to the point that it is trying its very best to escape. The 7 universe gods who rushed over had already realized the existence of the Iron Wing Beast. Previously, the Iron Wing Beast stayed inside the forest. If they had not passed by the forest or done a thorough check, they would definitely be unable to discover the existence of the Iron Wing Beast. However, at that moment, the Iron Wing Beast had dashed out of the forest and trying its best to escape. As a result, they found the Iron Wing Beast immediately. I wonder if the body of this Iron Wing Beast contains a white blaze fruit. I hope there is. The 7 universe gods' eyes were burning with excitement, and they were also approaching Jian Wushuang and the Iron Wing Beast at an amazing speed. At that moment, Jian Wushuang, who had unleashed the first stage of the secret skill of Dragon Blood, which would increase his speed by 10-fold, had already caught up with the Iron Wing Beast. Die! This time around, Jian Wushuang did not hold back. The same sword principle Crimson Light had been used, and it was completely filled with reincarnation power. Moreover, Jian Wushuang had also activated the secret skill of the Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor. Rustle! Sword light erupted, and with just one attack, the layer of black scales on the body surface of the Iron Wing Beast was shattered into pieces, and this caused a bloody wound to appear on the body of the Iron Wing Beast. What followed after was another stroke, which went along the bloody wound and penetrated the body of the Iron Wing Beast. Chapter 1500, The First White Blaze Fruit. Chapter 1500, The First White Blaze Fruit. The moment the Iron Wing Beast died, the layer of black scales on its surface lost its spirituality, and its defense power was reduced tremendously. Jian Wushuang flipped his wrist, and his divine power shattered the body of the Iron Wing Beast. After the body of Iron Wing Beast shattered into pieces, a Qian Kuan ring hidden in his body revealed itself. Qian Kung ring. Jian Wushuang was surprised. He quickly picked up the Qian Kuan ring and swept it with consciousness. He then saw a white blaze fruit floating in the Qian Kuan ring quietly. White blaze fruit. Jian Wushuang gripped tightly, and there was light in his eyes. I'm quite lucky. The very first Iron Wing Beast that I came across had a white blaze fruit in it. Only some of the Iron Wing Beasts in Wu Bei's cave carried a white blaze fruit. Most of them didn't have one. It led to a situation whereby some universe gods found an Iron Wing Beast and went through the trouble to kill it, but all the effort was in vain. From how it seemed, Jian Wushuang was quite lucky. Just then, swoosh, 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 swoosh. A few figures plunged over simultaneously and appeared around Jian Wushuang. They were the 7 universe gods. He killed the iron wing beasts. I was the closest to him earlier. I saw clearly that he really did take out a Qianquan ring from the iron wing beasts. In other words, he has a white blaze fruit with him. The 7 universe gods naturally fixed their gazes on Jian Wushuang. Crimson robe, carrying a sword. This look, you're Jian Wushuang. One of the blue-haired old ladies recognized Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang? A top expert in the top 20 on universe god ranking list? A white blaze fruit is in his hands. The few universe gods' faces grew grave. If it was an ordinary universe god who had gotten the white blaze fruit, they definitely would take action to fight for it without hesitation. However, the one who had the white blaze fruit was Jian Wushuang. He was in the top 20 on universe god ranking list. A person's name could protect them, just like a tree's shadow could shelter one from heat. The few universe gods naturally were reluctant. Humph. So what if he's an expert on universe god ranking list? We are all universe gods, and I don't think these people on universe god ranking list are stronger. They could kill peak universe gods in the 3rd heaven easily, and I can do that too. Plus, there are 7 of us. What's there to be afraid of? A middle-aged man with dark skin bellowed. Hearing what he had said, the other universe gods looked at each other in surprise and started hesitating. If you want to take action against an expert on universe god ranking list, it's your choice. I'm not interested, the blue-haired lady said and retreated. That's great. We have one less person to fight with us. The middle-aged man with dark skin smirked coldly. He's just an expert on the universe god ranking list, and he is only at the 20th rank. He's not even a real god. With the 6 of us joining forces, why should we be afraid of him? The few hesitating universe gods suddenly shimmered with joy, and they nodded heavily after giving some thoughts. Jian Wushuang, give us the white blaze fruit and we will let you off, the middle-aged man with dark skin roared. Pass us the white blaze fruit. Don't make us take action against you. The remaining 5 universe gods fixed their gazes upon Jian Wushuang and cornered him. Jian Wushuang smirked at the sight. He flipped and took out the Qianquan ring he had got from the iron wing beast's body. The white blaze fruit is here. If you are capable enough, come and take it, Jian Wushuang said calmly. Looking at the Qianquan ring in Jian Wushuang's hand, there was madness in the 6 universe gods' eyes. The middle-aged man with dark skin sounded cold. As he is courting death, let us grant his death wish. After we kill him, we shall fight for the white blaze fruit with our own power. All right. The other 5 universe gods nodded simultaneously. Then swoosh. The 6 figures plunged towards Jian Wushuang to launch an attack at the same time. There was a murderous intention that flashed in Jian Wushuang's eyes. His figure turned illusionary, and he appeared before the middle-aged man with dark skin who was at the far front. Then he wielded the Blood Mountain sword. Fast, too fast. At least to the middle-aged man. It was extremely unbelievable. He couldn't react at all, and his throat was pierced by Jian Wushuang's sword light. How could it be that fast? Before he died, the middle-aged man's eyes were wide open. After he killed the middle-aged man with one stroke, Jian Wushuang's figures became illusionary again. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Jian Wushuang's figures appeared in 5 different positions creepily, and he performed the same sword principle when he appeared. It looked like an ordinary stroke, but because it contained a slight bit of power of space-time, the sword principle was so swift that the 5 universe gods were unable to respond in time. Pust, 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 pust. The sound of 5 blades piercing into bodies was heard. In an instant, the entire universe quieted down. The 6 universe gods who had coveted Jian Wushuang's white blaze fruit and taken action against him were killed by Jian Wushuang's quick attacks. After killing the 6 universe gods, Jian Wushuang slowly reined in his sword and stole a glance at the blue-haired old lady who had retreated far away. The blue-haired old lady, who was covered in fear and astonishment, noticed Jian Wushuang's gaze, and she immediately bowed politely at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang didn't make it difficult for the blue-haired old lady. He moved and immediately left. The blue-haired old lady stood in the void as she watched Jian Wushuang leave. She then let out a breath of relief. As she looked at the 6 dead bodies scattered on the ground, there was disdain in her eyes. These 6 idiots didn't even know who they were. They had the guts to take action against an expert in the top 20 on Universe God ranking list. Just how stupid were they? The blue-haired old lady said. But she also knew that the 6 Universe Gods definitely belonged to those solo experts who weren't experienced. They cultivated to that point, and they might not see any true experts on Universe God ranking list. Usually, they would only hear legends about experts on the Universe God ranking list. But hearing legends and witnessing with one's own eyes were 2 different matters. Most of them didn't believe in legends. Naturally, they were in doubt of an expert on Universe God ranking list's power, to the point where they thought that even if they weren't as strong as the experts of the Universe God ranking list, they shouldn't be too far off. Just like the middle-aged man with dark skin earlier, who had reckoned so. She was different. She came from a medium-sized sect in Red Dragon Sanctuary. She once saw an expert on Universe God ranking list in action. The expert was only 70th on the Universe God ranking list, but he was extremely powerful. She felt totally hopeless and didn't have any intention to counterattack. The one earlier who had appeared before them was a superb existence from the top 20. Such an existence could match evenly or even defeat a real god. How could the few Universe Gods join forces and expect to be able to match evenly with him? The blue-haired old lady was glad that she hadn't taken action. Otherwise, she definitely would be the same as the other 6 people and have become one of the dead bodies scattered on the ground. She sighed with emotion. Then the blue-haired old lady took out a token. Sectmaster, there's a white blaze fruit here. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.